a real estate project or an infrastructure project or a company to invest in, we have to do the work, which means we better have a great value creation plan, because with asset prices high, you better create some value. And that's really at the core of everything we do.
Really, really tough right now. If you're looking at your opportunity set and you can see valuations are high, you think they're going to stay there, does it make it harder to get in?
Well, most of the time you're going to pay the highest price to get in, which means you better have conviction, and that conviction gets built around the quality of the teams. So we're blessed. I will say, Carlisle, 33 years of building great talent and great teams, and so we have specialized teams, lots of folks in the background who help create value, and when we see something that we think we can make a real difference with, then we go for it.
So I spoke to Mr. Rubenstein a little bit earlier, and I said, it feels like it's easy to raise capital right now, raise cash, and he said, I guess the people raising it probably won't agree with you, but certainly that seems to be the story at the moment. What's your message to people who have raised that capital then? Because you're saying there isn't going to be this big entry point that's going to open up anytime soon. What should they do?
Well, I think one of the primary reasons why there has been a strong flow of capital into private capital has been the returns. And the returns are expected to continue to be strong, premiums to what people can get over long periods of time in other asset classes. And so when we talk to folks, what we say is we're going to do our jobs, we're going to focus on creating value, and we expect the returns to continue to be premium returns.
Let's go, Matthew, right now. FV equals PV, 1 plus R to the T. Okay, what's important here is IRR is coming down.
I'm not going to pretend I've followed that.
Okay, we're going to look at the partial differential, the time function, because he's going to go to logs right now.
Yes.
You're going to go to logs. What is your duration of hold do given lower IRR? What is your duration do given the wall of money John just described? Do you go from a 5-7 year hold out to a 12 or 20 year sovereign wealth hold?
Well, the good thing is we can do either. And I think the flexibility of the capital that's been raised today gives us the flexibility to hold for 5 years or hold longer if we need to.
Well, cut to the chase. What are you doing now? Are you guys becoming more sovereign wealth fund-like because of the deck of cards David Rubenstein handed you?
Well, the sovereign wealth funds can hold forever, so we still are going to exit eventually. But we are holding longer. And I do think that one of the keys to holding longer is creating value on a compounded basis for a longer period of time. We're not quick flip artists, and that's the key. You can't buy low and sell high. What you have to do is have a fundamental view of what you can do with a project or a company, and then it does sometimes take 5, 7, 8 years to get done.
Do you have to go up the risk curve?
I will say that to get the same returns that we used to get, you have to go up the risk curve. And I think the reality is in today's world, returns are coming down. And where we used to underwrite things in excess of 20% returns, we're underwriting them in the high teens today for the same risk profile. And that's just the reality of the market today. That's still a fabulous return relative to other asset classes.
But what you just said was maintain the risk profile, assume a lower return. I'm asking whether you're taking more risk. Are you taking more risk?
Yeah, I think in the grand scheme of investing today, because we're being much more active with the companies, there's a modicum more of risk. Now, how do you counterbalance that? With real talent, with value creation teams, things that you can control, as opposed to leaving it to someone else to control. And that's how we try to manage that risk.
How do you perceive the wall of cash that your somewhat competitors, those that desire to play the Carlisle game, someone like Apple, Mr. Buffett's got a wall of money with him as well, but the technology people who have been advantaged by the boom of the last 10 or even 15 years, how do they play in your space? They want to. How do they affect that?
Well, I don't think they're going to compete directly. I think one of the great benefits of the wall of cash that's been accumulated in many, many companies is the fact that the U.S. has become a net saver as opposed to a net investor. And what that means is interest rates are going to have long-term a lot of pressure to stay low because that capital is going to find a place to have a home, which will keep long-term rates low. But when it comes to the kind of investing we do, we oftentimes find those kinds of investors to be good partners for us.
Compare what you and Mr. Buffett do, and that the standard Buffett procedure is interest, ownership, substantial preferred yield coming in 7, 8, 9% or well. Is that the Carlisle way, or do you have a different structure than we perceive Mr. Buffett has?
Yeah, a different kind of model. So we'll see a business or a project that we have a particular expertise in, and we believe that that business is good, but could become great.
You're not going to take the preferred yield coming in.
We're going to own most of the time the equity. And then we're going to work with the management team, and we're going to do everything we can to try to grow and improve that business. We also take on some really interesting projects. So right now, we're in fact redeveloping JFK's international terminals. Now that's an important project.
Everyone listening to this is now very, very happy. Continue.
Everything leading to the show just stopped. Blow every break, folks. Go.
This is an incredibly exciting project for what needs to be done. Now, it's going to be a long-term project. We're hopefully going to get started this year. We're going to have a number of years of construction, and so get ready for some disruption. But the end product is going to be fabulous. And so we view that as an equity role to actually orchestrate that project.
I had a 2.5-hour plane delay.
Here we go.
JFK is BA 112. You had the Gulfstream. BA 112 is moving around. What are you going to do in the lessons learned from LaGuardia as a public-private consortium? Are you going to transfer that success over to JFK and do it in a timeline that's Rubenstein-like, or is it going to be Port Authority-like?
Well, I have to say, the lessons from the LaGuardia process have informed a lot of what we've done.
Yes.
And we're doing this in partnership with the Port Authority. And so we've had free access to planning, time schedules, a really collaborative approach. And we think that will result in, yes, a giant project where there will be moments where everybody will be a little bit disrupted. But we think long-term, this can actually be quite a smooth project.
This is about adding value to the economy.
Yes.
Some politicians in Washington that don't like what you guys do. What's your message back to them? It's election season. You're the football again.
Yes.
Stay back.
It is election season. And so it's election season. And I think part of what happens during election season is people may not be fully informed by the economic value that our industry and Carlyle actually provides. And so what we're trying to do is really help inform everyone on projects like JFK. 5,000 new jobs.
But the challenge
in New York.
Glenn, this is so important. The challenge there is a labor construct in New Jersey, New York, and for all of you worldwide, we're going local here, but it's an American issue. The labor structure crushes you. To build a mile of road is a cliche. How are you, within a public-private consortium, going to solve what seems to be an intractable labor issue in building what everybody agrees are good things?
Partner with them. So in our equity...
You're giving the unions an equity kicker here.
Equity is the unions are investing in the project. They're actually writing a check to invest in the project and are really excited about the project and the return.
We're going to run out of time. I want to go here. What have you learned best practice from Heathrow other than their killer taxes they charge me?
Well, I was going to advance order and planning. So the supply chain for materials and construction phasing is critical. And you have to do it way in advance.
Can you get it so I can get a luggage card at JFK? I don't have to pay $8.75.
People come on. You. Tom makes it about him.
Pharaoh's got the little cute modern thing. I'm traveling with Mrs. King with 8 pieces of luggage. JFK's the worst airport in the world.
You know the history of these airports are? The airlines had to go out and build their own terminals. Yeah. So the whole airport is completely segregated.
So the key here is it's going to be much, much better. But this is a great example.
We're all doing this. We're all crossing our fingers.
I know. But this is a great example of, I think, the distinct role that Carlyle takes, which is how can we, in fact, add value? And that's in this investment environment where everything's expensive. I'll go back to where we started. Where everything's expensive. This is what we have to do.
On Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television, it's time that I get depressed. What's the end date on this project? Am I going to be around?
You'll be around. You'll be around. It's roughly a 5-year construction schedule,
oh, come on!
And the Terminal 1 will continue to operate while we're doing construction.
We're going to hold you to that.
Terminal 1 is the worst.
Yes.
Larry Summers once went apoplectic in Dubai over Terminal 1 at JFK.
Glenn, we're going to leave it there. It's a great catch up.
This has been wonderful.
Thank you very much. Co-CEO. Let's check in with Bloomberg First Word News, shall we? Let's cross over to New York and catch up with Bloomberg's Lisa Browitz.
All right. Well, from JFK to Washington, D.C., the first day of President Trump's impeachment trial lasted 12 hours and ended earlier today. When it was over, the Senate had adopted the ground rules. Senators agreed on a more relaxed timeline, and they agreed to put off the key question here of calling more witnesses. President Trump's legal team blasted the Democrats' case.
And after saying for weeks that they had overwhelming evidence to support their case, the first thing that the House managers have done upon arriving finally in this chamber after waiting for 33 days is to say, well, actually, we need more evidence.
Democrats may start presenting their case today. The Pentagon has underscored the problem it has in balancing its books. The Defense Department made $35 trillion in accounting adjustments last year. That's a total that's larger than the entire U.S. economy. The reason is the money is double or quadruple counted as it moves between accounts. The Pentagon admits it has failed 2 audits in a row. The U.S. and China haven't set a timetable for the next phase of their trade negotiations. That's according to a Chinese official directly involved in the talks. He told Bloomberg in Davos that the focus is now on implementing the Phase 1 deal. President Trump has said he would travel to Beijing to start the next round. Netflix says it's ready for the competition. Apple, AT&T, Comcast, and Disney are all entering the streaming video market. Netflix is working to keep customers loyal with a flood of shows and movies. The company plans to boost its spending by 20% this year. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Lisa Abramowitz. Back to you, John.
Lisa Abramowitz, thank you very much. Back here on Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. Tom, the markets conversation continues. In just a moment, we'll be catching up with Scott Minerd, the CIO of Guggenheim.
Timely.
Boy, didn't he make some headlines
Timely.
at the start of this week.
He did. It's going to be the Ponzi interview. Much to talk about with Mr. Minerd. And not only that, but of course his commitment to helping us with his perspective on Fed Day as well. We can tie that in.
So in just a moment, we'll be catching up with Scott Minerd of Guggenheim. We'll talk to him about the credit markets, whether we are seeing signs of what he has described as a Ponzi scheme. We'll also get him to reflect on that amazing conversation we had with Bob Prince of Bridgewater around about an hour ago about whether we've seen the end of the boom-bust cycle as we know it. I know a lot of people have got a lot to say about that.
I have never said this, folks, in 16 years. I wish it would get colder.
I feel the same right now.
It is
the
gorgeous.
Sun on our
Gorgeous.
back in Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum for our audience worldwide. This is Bloomberg.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
The way that people are using space has fundamentally changed the way markets operate.
Aaron Jodka is Managing Director at Colliers International.
10, 15 years ago, it was a hub and spoke model. So you needed to have a big distribution center in Atlanta, in the Inland Empire, or somewhere up in New Jersey, Dallas, Chicago. Well, now I can get to everywhere. I'll put it on a truck and I'll get there in a couple days. Got the country covered.
And Jodka says online retailers are driving this shift in commercial real estate.
With Amazon, the fulfillment centers, all the different grocery chains, Peapod, all these operators trying to get essentially on-demand products.
And Jodka says watch for Amazon and others to continue to snap up strategically located buildings.
Not only are you able to get your tissues tomorrow or today, they're ever increasingly trying to get food to people's houses on a short basis.
And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Connecting decision.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Witch Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Psst. We've got something to tell you about the Honda Jazz. We know it looks small, but inside, it's really big. That's why we've created the small but big Jazz event, where you can get 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing on all grades until the 31st of January. The Honda Jazz, the small car with the big offer. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
The tightening of central banks all around the world, it wasn't intended to cause a downturn, wasn't intended to cause what it did. But I think lessons were learned from that. And I think it was really a marker that we've probably seen the end of the boom-bust cycle.
Bob Prince of Bridgewater, the co-CIO. Have we seen the end of the boom-bust cycle as we know it? We were stunned 90 minutes ago when he made that call, Tom.
Extraordinary. And there's been a number. This is a really market-focused day. We welcome all of you on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television. Thrilled that you're with us because it's been interview after interview of heated debate about what do you do after bond price up, yield down, equity prices to the moon. I mean, is Apple up another $100 billion today? We'll know at the market opening.
Let's bring in Scott Myers, shall we? Guggenheim Partners Global CIO. We're bookending two radically different comments. One from you to start the week, right, basically saying this market was like a Ponzi scheme. Right. And we end the week, middle of the week so far, with Bob Prince of Bridgewater saying it's the end of the boom-bust cycle as we know it.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because first off, Bridgewater, the people there are very smart.
Smart money.
Look, if you take the history of the United States since the late 70s, I would call monetary policy a policy of bubble to bubble. For instance, to save the economy after the stock market crash, right? The Fed cut rates and overinflated commercial real estate, and then we had to bail out the banks with the Resolution Trust Corporation. So then once things calmed down again, investors no longer thought that commercial real estate was safe, and they inflated the internet bubble to the wealth effect to keep the economy going. And then, of course, it went bust, and so then people didn't feel safe in stocks, so they started buying homes, and we played that out, and it bust. And so my attitude is when you look at the amount of leverage in corporate America and where we are today, you definitely are inflating a bubble here in credit.
Well, let's talk about the quote that you sent out to clients. A long note, I've read it. Here's a quote from it. The timing is hard to predict, but it reminds me a lot of the lead up to 2001 and 2002. Then you pointed out the term Ponzi scheme, where the only reason investors keep adding to risk is the fear that prices will be higher tomorrow. Right. With that in mind, you've made this call. Are you de-risking or are you staying long risk? What are you doing?
I got to tell you something. We started de-risking back in 2018. And I can tell you that I was an investment genius in 2018. But when the Fed pivoted, you had to ask yourself a question. And I'm guided a lot by behavioral finance and the work of Danny Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize. One of the biggest mistakes asset managers or asset allocators make is they try to do too many tactical trades. And so what Danny would say is, look 5 years into the future, what do you see coming? And don't change what you're doing to try to catch a tactical move. So, and so in 2019, as an investment manager, I looked like an idiot because we've trailed a lot of other people who've basically just said, hey, wave in corporate debt, wave in high yield, let's go for it. And, someday, the music will stop. But
is the elasticity when the music stops something anyone can manage, including smaller investors listening on Bloomberg Radio, watching on Bloomberg TV? Is the elasticity or malleability of the system there so we can respond and react when we get that? Or is it a jump condition where it's going to be ugly?
Well, one of my colleagues at Guggenheim likes to say that asset prices go up on an escalator and they come down.
Well, normal.
And they come down in an elevator. Yeah. Right? So the problem is, since nobody I know is smart enough to figure out when the music stops, I think that's a really difficult thing for people to try to time. And, here, as an example, if 2 days from now or early next week, there's an announcement from the Federal Reserve or in the Fed meeting on Wednesday that they're thinking about tapering the bill purchase program. Remember what happened when we talked about tapering QE in 2013? We didn't even need the act.
That was a taper tantrum, and this is going to be called the Maynard tantrum.
Carry on. Is this QE then? James Goldman of Morgan Stanley sat in your seat, said exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
many people disagree with you, though.
Well, I got to tell you something. When I talk to people at the Fed and other believers that don't think this is QE, they say, oh, well, the Fed isn't buying longer-term duration assets to affect the shape of the term structure of interest rates. And my response to that is, look, I think the official name of QE is large-scale asset purchases, right? And this looks like large-scale.
Well, I spoke to Ken, and John, this is important. I spoke to Ken Rogoff 2 hours ago on a panel here at WEF, and he alluded definitely to what Mr. Maynard's saying, the idea that, look, it's QE, it's not QE, doesn't matter. The fact is they're affecting the process, which changes the behavior of the market.
This debate's going nowhere, Scott. What I want to try and understand is, what is the risk of getting it wrong?
Well,
what's the risk of saying it's QE if it's not QE, and what's the risk of saying it's not QE when it is QE? Is this just a debate just to have behind closed doors, or does it actually matter?
I think whatever label we put on it, the consequences are the same. And that is that when you put liquidity into the system and you create money, which is what the central bank is doing, it doesn't matter what you buy. You could buy baseball cards, right? But that liquidity leaks out into other asset categories. And so you get inflated prices in other areas. And, as I've talked about in the recent piece, corporate bonds. With central banks in Europe and Asia running negative interest rates and the Fed pumping out liquidity,
right?
It just, the incremental stretch for yield just keeps compressing risk assets.
John, I invested in baseball cards years ago. I failed. I bought Oil Can Boyd where I should have bought Lenny Dykstra.
Should have waited for the Fed to buy T-bills.
I want to get to
it's the baseball purchase program.
To John's question about the news you've made here, Scott Maynard, about a Ponzi scheme. That assumes under Ponzi, under what we know of Bernie Madoff, there's someone ill out there. There's someone evil. There's someone bordering on civil or criminal violation. Who is that person within the Maynard Ponzi scheme?
Look, I'm not so sure that when Hyman Minsky framed the comment about a Ponzi market, that he was thinking that there was some nefarious activity going on. It's more of an investor behavior, which is being encouraged, if you want to find out.
By who?
By the Fed. Because we're just, every time, look, there was a debate back in December, do we have a Powell put, right? We do.
It was delivered, silver platter.
Yeah. So we're operating back in that mode again.
Before you go, need a conviction trade. Big calls, made a lot of headlines.
Right.
Where do you put your money? What's the number one conviction trade right now for you, 2020?
Silver.
Silver?
Silver? Why not gold?
Because when you look at the relative values of silver and gold, silver today is about, let's say, 65% below its prior peak. Gold is getting very close to its prior peak.
Can it go exponential like we're seeing in some of the non-precious metals?
I think there's a high probability of that.
Scott Maynard, fantastic conversation. A lot of headlines made this week from the Guggenheim Global CIO. A lot more conversation still to come up. You're going to hang around with me as we start the countdown to the opening bell. You are.
Did my people talk to your people?
I've got it signed off. We can have you for a little bit longer because just a moment we'll be catching up with the former British Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne. We'll also be talking to the BP CEO, Bob Dudley, and Deutsche Bank's Torsten
Slok is here.
Made it to Davos, Switzerland.
Very cool.
Much more still ahead as we count you down to the opening bell in New York City. From Davos, Switzerland, for the World Economic Forum, this is Bloomberg.
Silver. I got to get silver.
Business is constant.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Got big plans for 2020? Cap Capture and share every highlight on a gorgeous iPhone 11 with an ultra-wide camera. In Tesco Mobile's big January sale, you can get the latest iPhone for £40.75 a month with double data. That's a mighty 20 gigs. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 26th of January. Was 10 gigs, now 20 gigs. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
First time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
American economic power and future depends on...
Many of these countries, we've still seen people struggling.
Finance.
We're in this vortex of uncertainty. These big companies, they just sometimes lack focus.
Investment.
The markets have become a little bit too addicted to the Fed.
Timing the market is just so difficult.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Wednesday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. More news from the World Economic Forum from Davos, Switzerland. More news from the nation's capital as the Senate impeachment trial enters its second day. We'll keep you up on the latest on these fast-moving topics. Earnings continue as well as Netflix posted some pretty solid results last night. Stock is kind of mixed here in pre-market trading. Futures here, we are looking green on the screen. An up day, S&P up 12, Dow up 67. Let's see where the real action is in the equity markets pre-market. We welcome Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at this morning?
Well, you mentioned Netflix, Paul. You know, the numbers came out late yesterday. The stock initially fell. Then it turned around, moved higher. Now it's down again, lower by 0.5%. It's kind of an on the one hand, on the other hand set of results. I mean, on the one hand, the streaming video services fourth quarter earnings were almost double the average analyst estimate in the Bloomberg survey. On the other hand, Netflix added fewer subscribers than analysts predicted, and there's so much focus on growth with the company that people didn't like that particular shortfall for sure. You know what they did like, though, if they owned the shares? Tesla. up 4.5%. The electric car maker's market value surpassed $100 billion and exceeded the value of Germany's Volkswagen for the first time. Now, this move in the market value puts Tesla CEO Elon Musk in a position to receive about $346 million. That's the first part of an all-or-nothing pay award granted in 2018. Now, Tesla has to stay above $100 billion for a while for Musk to collect. Nonetheless, he's at least set up for that now. IBM, that was a set of results that went over well, up 3.5%. Fourth quarter revenue at the computer company beat the average estimate by the most in 6 quarters, thanks to last year's $33 billion purchase of Red Hat. Earnings also exceeded projections, and so did IBM's profit forecast for this year.
Good.
Johnson & Johnson, though, down 1.5%. The healthcare company's sales last quarter came up short of estimates for the first time in 2.5 years. U.S. revenue from J&J's baby care products fell 26%. Definite area of weakness for the company. Abbott Labs up 1%. The medical supplier's fourth quarter revenue rose more than analysts expected. So, healthcare company that did well. Boeing down 1%. The plane maker shares are lower for a second day after forecasting that U.S. regulators won't agree to let the 737 MAX jet fly again until June or July. Now, the regulators have said they don't have a time frame.
So I thought this was an issue that they cleared up, that you're not going to say when this thing is going to fly until the regulators give you that date. But here they are again, putting out some conflicting information.
Absolutely, and the back and forth has definitely got people's attention. Boeing was down yesterday by 3.3%. Some more from the earnings front. United Airlines up 1%. The carrier's profit for last year surpassed the target that had been set for this year. Fourth quarter results were in line with projections. Ally Financial up 3.5%. The auto lender posted fourth quarter profit to beat estimates and raised its quarterly dividend by 2 cents a share to 19 cents. Capital One Financial, the credit card issuer, up 2.5%. Fourth quarter earnings and revenue surpassed estimates. Northern Trust, though, down 2.5%. The bank's fourth quarter profit and assets under management were lower than projections. And then Phenol down 1.5%. This is an electrical component maker. Their earnings forecast for this year trailed the lowest estimate. One more, CIT Group up 5%. The business finance company will join the S&P Midcap 400 index before Monday's open. That, of course, means funds tracking that index are going to have to buy shares.
That's nice. The stock goes up. You didn't even do anything. You just got put into an index.
That was what we saw with Chinese assets, right? Yep. Remember when they were put into the MSCI index?
You really see the index effect these days when companies go into the small cap 600.
Okay.
Not so much actually with the S&P 500 is there too, because you have a whole lot more money chasing it.
But if you're a small cap stock, it's big. Right?
More noticeable with the smaller companies, and CIT sort of in the middle. They're getting a benefit.
Okay, Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thanks so much for that market color here, pre-market. Again, Netflix last night reported some numbers. EPS better than expected. The sub number for the fourth quarter better than expected. Some guidance, kind of mixed guidance. Let's get some real color on that. We welcome our good friend Brian Weiser. He's a Group M Global President for Business Intelligence. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. I know you followed this company for a long time. What was your key takeaway from the numbers and then from the conference call from Reed Hastings last night?
Yeah, well, of course, I'm looking at it through a slightly different lens, more on how it impacts the broader industry, including the ad-supported industry that it does not participate in. But I thought that they continue to grow, they continue to make progress, and I'm not worried about whether it's 7 million or 8 million subs in their guidance. The point is that they're continuing to invest, they're continuing to expand, they're continuing to get towards a place where they'll be cash flow at least neutral. But my gosh, the amount of investment, when you think about it, the implicit guidance for around $17 billion of cash content spend this year is it's just staggering.
Well, that is staggering, and it raises a question: is all spending good spending?
On average, yeah. The more spaghetti you have to throw against the wall, the more that sticks.
Well, but there is the consequence of burning through cash in order to make the spaghetti to throw against the wall.
The bond market is there to support it.
Well, that's my issue. Is that at what point, is this going to be a situation where people say, "Show me the money. Can you make it?"
I know. Well, this is the perplexing thing, from an investor perspective. The let's call it willful optimism that they can grow into their market capitalization is quite something. But that said, I think what investors have usually expressed is that Netflix has generally delivered in a big picture sense on what they promised they would do over a very long time horizon. So I get why investors give them express confidence in the manner that they do. That said, again, from the perspective of impacting the rest of the industry, every other company, whether you're a Comcast, whether you're an AT&T, or everyone else, and that's really where I think I would focus as much effort on. The fact is that as long as Netflix can make their pathway to being at least cash flow neutral, independent of whether or not Netflix is appropriately valued, the point is that they'll continue to invest, that they can make a business work spending, call it $20 billion and more on content a year in a couple of years. And that is what will force everyone else in the industry, Disney and Comcast and AT&T, CBS, Viacom, CBS, to raise the stakes on what they're putting into the space. And then, of course, everyone else has lower margins as a result.
So, Brian, the Reed Hastings Netflix model is a subscription model. I think they're pretty adamant that they're going to stay a subscription model. Contrast that with Comcast and their Peacock streaming service, which is going to launch later this year. That's going to have a decidedly advertising a component to us. Talk to us about kind of the advertising-supported video-on-demand business.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hastings was absolutely right in his comments yesterday that it's not like they're going to expand the market of advertising if they were to step in. And I think that's something that gets lost by a lot of people looking at this space. The very fact that you add ad inventory does not necessarily, or almost certainly won't, expand the market. So if you're Comcast or if you're anyone else, if you're going to offer an ad-supported platform, you are taking spending share from other suppliers of that inventory. In the case of Comcast, that may mean that, hey, if they end up with an extra, call it 2% of total viewing share of all premium video in the United States, they probably will get an extra 2% of total advertising share, at least of TV spending. The risk to that is that everyone else also spends equal amounts, and then they're in the same place as where they started.
Yeah.
So the pie sticks, relatively speaking.
Given your experience, long experience covering this space, in 5 years, what's your prediction for who the leading player is going to be in the streaming industry?
Whoever can spend the most. I think that Netflix certainly is well positioned. I think the risk is that at some point investors start to say, hey, wait, we're valuing this company at such and such a valuation. We really need to see cash flow and operating income that kind of supports it. And that sort of thing could cause some compression of spend, and that would then lead to a less viewing share. Amazon in some ways is better positioned because their business model is completely different. They're completely dependent on, or primarily dependent on Prime and the broader e-commerce business. So that gives them a lot of long-term opportunity. But that said, Netflix has certainly built a culture that's going to support ongoing, progress with respect to video entertainment, and maybe Amazon will have to continue to invest towards. Let's not rule out, of course, the incumbent video players. Disney is truly betting the company on Disney Plus. They're willing to risk sacrificing core parts of their business. I think they may need to invest more than they currently plan on, but they probably are willing to do it. And they're really trying to future-proof themselves as much as possible, as is Comcast for that matter.
Hey, Brian, you mentioned CBS Viacom. How did they fit into this new landscape here?
So my observation there is that, when the merger came together, they kind of put forward a best of both worlds view, right? They said, oh, well, CBS has this strategy and Viacom is doing this strategy, and let's do both. That struck me as a not fully formed strategy. It's possible that's the right outcome. I doubt it. That said, I think there's a real advantage to either side. I just think they need to pick a lane. Either be the arms dealer of choice and be everyone's second favorite supplier of content, which is essentially the path that Viacom would have moved towards on its own, or the CBS approach, where they have invested in All Access. The Picard series and the other Star Trek initiatives, I think, are really quite significant, and were when CBS started investing in that, because they gave up meaningful cash, but they lost an advantage by not investing more heavily into it. Can you imagine if Viacom CBS decided to sell off their TV stations?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they could position themselves as being like Netflix.
Yeah. Brian Wieser, thank you so much for your insight and the broader picture here of the media landscape at a time of streaming transformation. Brian Wieser is the global president of business intelligence of Group M, joining us by phone. Let's shift gears, get the news outside the business. We've got Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, Paul. After a marathon day, the Senate set the rules for the impeachment trial of President Trump. It sets a more relaxed timeline, but sticks with Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's plan to put off the question of calling additional witnesses. President Trump has wrapped up his trip to Davos, Switzerland, and his part in the 2020 World Economic Forum, heading into bilateral talks with the Iraqi president this morning. The president said U.S. troop levels and oil supplies are among the things his administration is still working out with Iraqi officials.
We are obviously working on a lot of things together. We're working on military. We're working on ISIS. We have a whole host of very difficult things to discuss and some very positive things also. And we've been friends, and the relationship is very good.
President Trump also says that the United States has a plan in place to contain the coronavirus outbreak. The potentially deadly virus that first appeared last month at a fish market in Wuhan, China, is spreading fast, and it has reached American soil. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirmed the first American case of the virus, a resident in Washington State who recently returned from China. Nancy Messonnier from the CDC says the focus now remains on identifying any other potential cases.
One of their most important things they'll be working on is tracing of potential contacts. We want to make sure that nobody else that this patient came in contact with is at risk.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts, more than 120 countries. Michael Barr, this is Bloomberg. Lisa, Paul?
Michael Barr, thank you so much. Looking at futures here, S&P up 13, Dow up 66, NASDAQ up 58. We were talking about Netflix earlier. That stock pre-market is down about 0.5%. Looking at Netflix. Also, some headlines coming across. UN experts, Saudi Crown may have tried to influence report.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Influential conversation.
Listen, we know you're not here for ads, but while you're waiting for the music, cybercriminals might be waiting for you to expose your login credentials and payment information over Wi-Fi. Help keep your online activity private with Norton 360. It gives you multiple layers of protection, including secure VPN with bank-grade encryption, device security, password manager, and PC cloud backup. Go to uk.norton.com to get all-in-one protection starting at $24.99 for your first year. Terms apply. That's uk.norton.com.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures climbing this morning as China takes steps to contain the spread of a deadly virus that had rattled international markets. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are up 13 points. Dow futures up 66. NASDAQ futures up 58. The DAX in Germany is little change. 10-year Treasury, little change. Yield 1.77%. Yield on the 2-year, 1.53%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.7% or $1 to $57.39 a barrel. COMEX gold is little change, down 90 cents to $15.57 an ounce. The euro, 1.1093 against the dollar. The British pound at 1.3147. And the yen is at 109.94. Watching Johnson & Johnson down 1.6% this morning after fourth quarter sales trailed estimates. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Lisa. Thank you so much, Karen. This morning on Bloomberg Television from Davos with Jonathan Farrow and Tom Keene, Bob Prince, the co-chief investment officer of Bridgewater, the world's biggest hedge fund firm, came out and said the boom-bust economic cycle is over, that basically we are now entering a phase of shallow dips and rises at a time of central bank intervention. Steve Rizzuto joining us now. Steve Rizzuto is Mizuho Securities chief U.S. economist. Do you agree, Stephen?
Well, to a certain extent, yes, I do. I mean, I don't think boom-bust cycles are over completely, but I do think the fact that balance sheets have been so well controlled by corporations, households, and banks, and in fact, we're in a very, very strong balance sheet position in an environment where there's a lot of debt outstanding, means that primarily the economy is on a very, very slow, shallow growth trajectory where credit quality is deteriorating slowly, and therefore we're likely to continue this path of expansion for another 3 to 5 years in this very, very shallow growth trajectory we've been on throughout the entire expansionary period.
So, Stephen, again, the asset inflation and the asset prices that we've seen, certainly in 2019, but even before, driven in large part by easing monetary policy across the globe. Do you expect that scenario to remain in 2020, maybe as far as into the following year?
Without a doubt. In the environment we're living in, which is a world of excess supply where deflation is the bigger enemy than inflation, there's no reason for monetary policy to go back to looking at higher interest rates. In fact, in some areas, like the U.S., where the dollar is higher than it should be, we're probably looking at monetary policy that's still too restrictive on a relative basis. And I think, therefore, you're not going to get any real spikes in inflation and spikes in interest rates on the backdrop of it. We're more likely looking for additional accommodation coming down the road from different areas.
I'm struggling to square this idea that we've seen the end of this boom and bust at a time when junk bond yields are just, basis points away from their all-time lows. The investment-grade bond yields also near all-time lows. We have the increase of debt sales globally. You have an increase in sort of selective default, certainly in the Chinese banking system, but also here increasingly in the U.S. How is that not potentially the seeds of something more systemic and problematic going forward?
Well, it is, and that's why I said this isn't done forever. This is just going to be a very, very long, shallow expansionary period. Excuse me. I implied that the boom-bust cycle isn't over. It's just been extended, and that's where I disagree with the news story you were running earlier. I actually don't believe it's over. I think we've just extended the period of shallow growth several more years into the future, because we are looking at these low interest rate environments. We are slowly accumulating excesses in the system. Eventually, those excesses will catch up with us. But in an environment of sustained low short-term interest rates and deflationary pressures, it takes much longer for those accumulated problems to manifest themselves in becoming a systemic issue.
The longer it takes, does the problem get substantially worse, meaning that the leverage builds that much more and the subsequent downturn is that much more painful?
You have to remember, leverage in itself is not a problem. There are three sins of leverage. The first one is excess leverage. The second one is shortening duration. And the third one is a rising debt burden. And in an environment where we've leveraged, but we've leveraged long, and we're looking at a sustainable low interest rate environment, the debt servicing cost never goes up. And it's always the debt servicing cost that causes problems. For example, for the non-financial corporate space in the United States right now, debt service burdens after 9 Fed rate hikes and 3 Fed rate cuts is at the lowest level we've seen since the 1970s. That's 50 years ago.
Hey, Stephen, that's
an incredible performance.
It is. Well, what is the biggest risk in your mind to your outlook for, relatively steady growth going forward?
The biggest risk that I think is out there is that the Federal Reserve itself does not recognize the fact that this interest rate environment that they've created is too restrictive, and we're actually importing global deflationary risks. And if you want to think about what happens with leverage, how can leverage become a problem in and of itself? That is if we import deflation. When you're heavily levered and you've got deflation, that's when you can get screwed, because real financing costs go up dramatically. And you could have that cycle come through. So we've been arguing to the Federal Reserve that they should be becoming more accommodative in principle to expand the balance sheet, get inflation back to its target, and drive the currency back down to levels that make much more sense.
Do you think the Fed still has the ability to boost inflation substantially with its balance sheet, given the fact that it has been unable to do so the past decade?
The reality is quantitative easing 1, quantitative easing 2 did exactly what they were supposed to do. They broke the downward trend in inflation where we were clearly heading towards deflation. They then got cute and decided to do Operation Twist, which lowered inflation expectations and flattened the yield curve. And then when they went into Operation Quantitative Easing 3 or QE Infinity, they immediately began to wanting to back away from it. And that backing away from it caused the taper tantrum. And this was the problem. So 3 out of 4 of them worked beautifully because they did exactly what you expected them to do. QE1, QE2, and Twist. Exactly what it was supposed to do in terms of inflation expectations and actual inflation. They blew it when they went to QE Infinity, and they've blown it in here with what they're doing in terms of the bills. Because they're telling you, we're buying bills, but, we're going to stop because it's just technical, and we're going to stop probably in the second quarter so you don't get the inflation expectations you should out of it. Central banks can screw up their own policies just as easily as anybody else can.
Steve Ricciuto, thank you so much for being with us and for weighing in. Steve Ricciuto, Mizuho Securities Chief U.S. Economist, weighing in on this comment from Bob Prince this morning. Really interesting. The end of the boom-bust cycle. Steve saying, maybe we've prolonged it for 5 years. They don't die in the same kind of way, but kind of interesting.
Yeah, saying that, we're going to have peaks and valleys, but suggesting that they may be shallower than we've seen in the past, influenced in large part by the easy monetary policy we're seeing around the world.
The other thing that he said that was quite interesting was if we are going to see some major disruption of this calm that we have currently, we'll see the tremors of it ahead of time. And that's the question that I have. Will we? I mean, what if it's necessarily...
When do we ever?
Well, I mean, sometimes with the subprime mortgage crisis, there were tremors. I mean, they were basically, it was, there were mini earthquakes. So there was plenty of sort of foretelling signs.
Or if
you look with hindsight, right. But their question is, could it be that, an exogenous risk or a solar flare or something else? Anyway, in markets, just throwing that out there. In markets, you're seeing a positive tilt ahead of the open as we face a calmer economy with global
Global economies expanding. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
On a TUI tour, our English-speaking local guides will take you off the tourist trail. They won't just help you find the perfect souvenir, they'll show you how to make it. Choose from over 70 unforgettable tours worldwide. From tranquil temples in India to sunrise safaris in South Africa. On a TUI tour, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Book now and enjoy up to £200 off per booking. Booking T's and C's and minimum spend applies. Selected holidays only. At all protected.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are, or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere. Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem. And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning. I'm Karen Moscow, along with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. And the opening bell is brought to you by SEI. Visionary asset managers find opportunity where others are challenged. Exploit disruption's potential with SEI's global operating platform. Find out how at SEIC.com/IMS. The S&P 500 higher at the open, up 0.3% or 9 points at 3329. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.2% or 55 points at 29,249. And the Nasdaq's up 0.5% or 42 points at 94.12. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, the yield 1.76%. The yield on the 2-year is at 1.52%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.9% on $1.12 to $57.27 a barrel. COMEX gold little changed at $15.5770 an ounce. The euro 1.1088 against the dollar, and the yen is at 109.87. Paul and Lisa.
Thank you so much, Karen. Meanwhile, negative interest rates on the forefront of people's minds over in Davos. Bloomberg Radio and Television have been speaking with a number of chief executive officers: Michael Corbat, Axel Weber, Jess Staley, Tidjane Thiam, Carlo Messina. They all spoke and weighed in on negative interest rates. Take a listen.
The business community just doesn't want lower rates. It likes certainty. It likes clarity.
Negative rates are a problem for the banking sector. That's completely true.
I have a very hard time to believe that they will do more than just edge slightly more negative.
The more divide you have, not just in the U.S., but around the world in political parties, the more uncertainty you have.
By now it's clear, the longer you keep that policy, the more the side effects become important.
When you have zero to negative interest rates, almost by definition, you're going to have asset bubbles.
There are two types of factors driving that. Some are cyclical, linked to an aftermath of a crisis. Others are more structural.
You want to ride that wave while it's happening, but keep your eye wide open for when there is a correction.
In the medium term, this cannot the way in which you can manage the real economy.
Those long-term trends weigh on the level of rates, and one should expect rates, negative or not, to stay low.
My expectation is that at the end, this trend will move into zero rate and then probably some positive rates.
Perhaps not so surprisingly, bank CEOs would like to see rates that are not negative. Shanali Bosek joining us from Davos. It seems like yesterday, global warming, climate change on the forefront. Today, the focus moving more to markets with monetary policy in focus. Can you give us a sense of just the mood today as people speak about the economy, which is generally good, and the interest rate policy, which still remains concerning to them?
Yeah, it's funny, Lisa, because what's generally good, we're definitely seeing a lot of some of the, the high minds here thinking of very significant risks in the market and credit markets in particular. A lot of bad feelings towards central bankers here. Of course, negative interest rates are really causing a lot of European banks to bleed and offset some of these costs to consumers. And once they offset those costs to consumers, it becomes unclear to a lot more people how good it is for the economy. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the Federal Reserve's policy, a lot of folks believe that, while the low interest rates have inflated asset prices, that there could be real issues in the future. We talked to CEO of Barclays, Jess Staley, who had said, Oxford just issued a 100-year bond at a little over 2%, and I don't think that's a good thing.
Interesting, Shanali, we saw earlier this week numbers out of UBS disappointing once again. What's the feeling over in Davos as it relates to just kind of the European banking sector? You're talking about negative interest rates. Awful tough way to kind of run a bank.
For sure, and it depends on who you're talking to. I had mentioned Jess Staley before, and there's some optimism there around the investment bank, which is surprising because just a year ago, everybody was a little worried across Wall Street about the investment banking businesses, but the trading figures in the fourth quarter for the big U.S. banks was a blowout. Meanwhile, over at UBS, wealth management is tied to market sentiment. Of course, they want to expand very aggressively in lending. They're really worried about interest rates, and they're worried about growing their net new money at a time when growth has been slowing generally around the world. Remember, at UBS, their U.S. assets have been kind of sluggish, where they really brought in a lot of these assets in China, where we're seeing another host of issues.
So right now it seems like the banking sector has been challenged by negative interest rates. Was there anything positive that people said, considering the fact that we currently are facing an economy that seems to be copacetic?
Oh boy, I was looking for the bad stuff. I have to be honest.
Well, no, I know. I'm looking. You know, that's typically how it works, right? People are looking for sort of what's the problem that we're not foreseeing. But I'm wondering, are we going to see an unexpected upside? I mean, honestly, that's sort of the sort of flip side of all of the pessimism that we've seen over the past decade has been that people have been caught off guard by the positive. And I'm wondering, the banking sector, having been so beaten up, at least when it comes to the stock price, could there be perhaps surprise on the upside if the economy continues to stabilize? Or is the fundamental business model, or were they basically saying the fundamental business model is so challenged by negative interest rates, by the overhang of debt that hasn't been gotten rid of or whatever from another era, that it's going to be hard regardless?
Listen, the one thing that's surprising, just in general, remember, Trump is here. That's changed the entire tone of Davos. People are falling around Trump. Wilbur Ross is just sitting in the main lobby. And everybody is, and remember, bank CEOs were all with Trump just this morning. Apparently at the dinner last night with Trump, everybody was really just going around the table talking about how they use the tax cuts, that they're creating jobs. And today I heard somebody tell me, they're like, you know what? If Europe starts to do a fiscal stimulus to the likes of the U.S., then we could be in a much better place. And so you're asking the upside. It's like, yeah, we have to look for bad things here, because all of these guys think things are pretty rosy. No, there's not a whole, we really have to dig when we talk to these folks about what and again, there are really significant risks out there. But generally, the tone here is good, and people don't believe that there are huge risks. And I think that Trump, frankly, has been received with a very friendly audience here in Davos.
Shonali, I've seen reports from Bloomberg News that there are about 117 billionaires in Davos this week, so it's a good time. 119. Okay, 119. So it's a good time to be a private banker, and we're seeing across the global financial services businesses focus on private wealth management. Is that a trend that when you listen to these bank CEOs that were speaking to Bloomberg radio and TV this morning, is that a trend that is likely to continue?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because a lot of the billionaires in Davos are not even coming to the World Economic Forum, and bankers at UBS, Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, they're all here because you can just have dinners at night or just around town. It's beautiful. It's 40 degrees here right now, Fahrenheit. And so, yes, private banking is still a very big business, because right now the world's billionaires are also owners of major assets and major companies. Yeah. And so if you're looking at investment banking, if you buddy up with a billionaire, you're able to advise them on how they sell their company, how they take out a loan against it. Are there margin loans involved? How do they structure their assets? What's tax efficient? There's just so many ways to use this clientele.
Shonali Bosick with some advice. Just buddy up with a billionaire and you should be fine. Yeah. Thank you. Shonali Bosick over in Davos for Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio. Thank you so much for being with us and for all of your coverage. It's definitely been an interesting powwow this year with a lot of news emerging, including, hey, the boom-bust cycle is over. That according to Bridgewater's Bob Prince. I do want to just make a note that Tesla just topped $100 billion to become the #2 automaker by market value. This comes amid a surge of optimism, a number of analyst calls that have come out expecting the share price to rise meaningfully more as Elon Musk shows that he can actually produce cars.
Absolutely. I mean, the stock is up 3.3% today to $565. It was just $178 back in June. So it's had just an incredible run up of, some better than expected outlook for production. Also opening of that China factory, which presumably will open up that huge market to the Tesla automobiles. And now talking about building a factory in Germany as well.
This is such a fascinating story because the bears and the are so incredibly polarized, and there's a Bloomberg Business Week cover story coming out in the next edition of the magazine talking about the incredible steps Elon Musk has taken to stop the short sellers. And the short sellers are as emboldened and energized as his supporters, and they are on Twitter and they are out there pushing that share price. Basically the most shorted. It is now, I believe, still one of the most shorted, if not the most shorted stock yet again in the S&P 500. Just an interesting story, and if to just take a step back and think, this company is now, by market value, the number 2 automaker, even though it accounts for a fraction of the automobiles. Very few people have adopted the Tesla, and it's unclear whether it can actually make money over a sustained period of time.
Yeah, this is, it's been a tremendous stock to just analyze and to watch. It's been, one of the most incredible momentum stocks, both on the upside and on the downside. The stock moves violently, but we've seen just this move since June has just been straight up, and the bulls are clearly winning the day here.
Michael Barr, do you ride a Tesla to work every day?
Yeah, it's spelled Subaru. Yes.
Yeah. It's spelled Subaru. All right. Well, I think that you have some other news for us other than the Tesla front.
Yes. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, Paul. The Senate has approved rules for President Donald Trump's trial on 2 articles of impeachment. Speaking from the Economic Forum in Switzerland this morning, President Trump said he had no problem with witnesses appearing at his trial. Trump was unsure about what could be gained from testimony from Lev Parnas, the former associate of his attorney Rudy Giuliani. Parnas has been indicted on federal corruption charges and claims he was working at the behest of the president to get Ukraine to launch an investigation into Joe Biden.
He's a con man. Okay, so ready? Let me answer that one. True? I don't know him. Okay, other than he's sort of like a groupie. He shows up at fundraisers. Okay, so I don't know anything about him.
A potentially deadly virus that first appeared last month at a fish market in Wuhan, China, is spreading fast, and it has reached American soil. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirmed the first American case of the coronavirus. A resident in Washington State who recently returned from China, Nancy Messonnier, is with the CDC.
There are already protocols in place that Washington State has practiced to ensure that people have the appropriate respiratory precautions to prevent spread of illness.
Additional screenings have been set up at 5 major U.S. airports. The number of cases of the coronavirus jumped to 440 in China, with 9 deaths. Before there was Saturday Night Live, there was the Monty Python Flying Circus, and we have lost a member.
And now for something completely different.
Terry Jones has died. His family says he died after battling a rare form of dementia. Terry Jones was 77. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Lisa Paul.
Michael Barr, thank you so much. Have you ever driven in Tesla, Lisa?
No, I think I once got into one that was on display in a mall, a shopping mall, and that was basically as close as I got to it. What about you, Mike?
I did drive one. I did test drive one.
Was it one of the autonomous ones? Was it driven for you, or did you actually drive it?
This one was the $90,000 job with the torque and everything. I mean, that was an experience.
Was it great?
Oh yeah, it was excellent.
Where'd you drive it?
It was I want to say it was just right outside of New York, right at the New York border.
Did you gun it?
The test drive right at yes, I did.
Did you exceed the speed limit?
Yes, I did.
Well, there you go.
Thanks. Man, police, if you want to come after me, I'm Irving.
I think that there's a statute of limitations.
Right. Well, Bloomberg News emeritus, editor emeritus, Matt Winkler has a Tesla. Bought, I think, one of the first ones off the lot.
Seriously?
He's put his deposit down for the truck, the Tesla truck.
Oh, yeah? Hopefully the one that hasn't had its window broken.
Window, right?
Yeah.
So
Meanwhile, over in markets, we're seeing the rally persist. We're seeing the Nasdaq up 0.6% and the S&P up 0.4% as people view the positive economic backdrop and some of the fears over the coronavirus spread end up abating a bit. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Hyundai's premium Genesis marquee is coming after BMW, Porsche, and Lexus with the new SUV. The turbocharged Genesis GV80 will start selling in the U.S. later this year. Luxe features include a 14.5-inch split-screen display and an air purification system. Is your New Year's resolution to eat less carbs? Good luck, especially as Parker House rolls are suddenly everywhere. Warm and buttery, these classic simple white bread loaves, think Pillsbury white, are being embraced by top chefs seeking to elevate humble dishes into fine dining. Newer versions come lard glazed rolls and crackled from an open fire, and even as a bread course on a $260 tasting menu. Spanish winemakers Warren Terrace may cut U.S. sales in half. Almost 90% of vintners surveyed by the Spanish Wine Federation say the tariffs will affect them seriously, given that the U.S. is the biggest export market for 1 in 4 of the country's winemakers. Amanda Rode, Bloomberg Radio.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. Doing Rich. I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Global News 24 hours.
Not in my 20 years of being a news agent have I seen my shop so buzzing. And it's all because it's a double rollover tonight. I've even set some confetti off to celebrate. Our customers can't get enough of it. So come on, don't miss it.
Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. 1 free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update brought to you by EisnerAmper, named Best Global Accounting Firm for the 3rd year in a row by Hedge Week, a leading hedge fund industry publication. Learn more at EisnerAmper.com/FS. U.S. stocks are rising on speculation the repository illness that emerged from China will not be as bad as initially feared, or the respiratory illness, as initially feared, and has better than forecast corporate earnings lifted optimism. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 is up 0.5% or 14 points. It's at 3335. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.4% or 121 points at 29,318. And the Nasdaq up 0.6% or 56 points at 9427. 10-year Treasury up 2/32, yield 1.76%. The yield on the 2-year 1.52%. And NYMEX crude oil is down 2.25%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Lisa.
Thank you so much, Karen. We are so lucky to have with us now from Davos, David Rubenstein, who, of course, is the co-chair of Carlyle. And he also is the host of Peer-to-Peer Conversations, the David Rubenstein Show. And David, your latest conversation, I want to really start there because it's a fascinating one with Mark Benioff of Salesforce. He had built Salesforce into this $130 billion software giant. He had something to say, though, about Facebook in particular, and I want to start there. He was critical of it, right?
He was. He called it, sort of like the cigarettes of our time. So what he meant was addictive and not really healthy for you. And he also thinks that Facebook should do a better job of policing what goes on Facebook. And he said this to Mark Zuckerberg on numerous occasions. So it's not that common for major titans in Silicon Valley to criticize each other. It happens from time to time. But anyway, he has a relationship with Mark, and Mark is going to do what he's going to do. But Mark Benioff has built a company from scratch actually the current market cap today is about $160 billion. He started around 1999, and he had earlier been mentored by Steve Jobs. So he has a long history in Silicon Valley, but this company is really unique in what it does in terms of customer relationship management.
Yeah, David, that's where I wanted to go, the angle with Steve Jobs. Clearly he influenced a generation of technology executives and entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. Talk to us about his influence on Mark Benioff. What were some of the things that Mark learned from Steve Jobs?
Well, one thing he learned was you need to get size very quickly. He said, Steve Jobs said to him, you need to grow by 10 times in 24 months if you're going to be taken seriously. If you don't scale quickly, you're never going to be around. He also said that you ought to work on your biggest customers, get a couple big customers, and then make sure they are pleased with what you do. And those big customers will then help you get other customers. And Mark did a lot of that. Mark had been a intern really at Apple for a while, and he's talked to Steve from time to time, and they developed a good relationship.
Mark, when we talk about big tech and we talk about 2020 and the election cycle, especially if Mark Benioff is saying that this is the tobacco of our time, is he saying that it should be regulated, that Facebook should be regulated in the same sort of way?
He does think that, yes. Many people don't think that regulation is a good thing necessarily, and many people in Silicon Valley don't want it. But many people think that outside of Silicon Valley, it's a good thing. Now, some people in Silicon Valley maybe generally say regulation be appropriate, but they don't not usually that public about it. Mark does think it should be regulated. And I would say in all the interviews I've done on this program, there are very few that you could say you didn't need an interviewer. Mark is such a good interviewee and such a good talker, and he's so expressive and he's so interesting and humorous that you could just say, David, just sit on the sideline and let Mark do the talking. And to some extent we did that, but he's just one of the most enjoyable people to interview and a very impressive person. And he bought Time magazine not long ago, and he's very much enjoying owning that.
David, you're in Davos. I'd love to get your impressions. We were once again hearing, particularly yesterday, just a lot of rhetoric and discussion and commentary from corporate executives and political leaders about the environment and sustainability. I know you've been to Davos many times. Is it different this time, the discussion you're hearing, or is it just more rhetoric about this topic, do you think?
Well, Davos is different because it didn't snow at all this time. That's one change. Secondly, the President of the United States came, and that's always a big thrill for people in Davos to get the President of the United States because he tends to draw other heads of state. So there's something like 50 heads of state here. I was in a meeting this morning with President Trump, and I saw him in an afternoon session yesterday, and he's, really much talking about the economy and how well it's doing, and it is. And I think the business people here, European, and he met with European CEOs last night, and American ones say, whatever he's doing, it's working because the economy is booming, relatively speaking. It's not growing at 3 or 4%, but it's doing well. Interest rates are low. Unemployment is low. And people are pretty optimistic about how the economy is going to go this year. So people are feeling pretty good about things here.
David Rubenstein, thank you so much for being with us. We can't wait to watch the peer-to-peer episode with Mark Benioff. David Rubenstein, Carlyle Group co-chairman and co-founder and host, of course, of the David Rubenstein Show, peer-to-peer conversations. I do want to just bring you this breaking news headline that the D.C. Attorney General is suing President Trump's inaugural committee. So we will be bringing any additional news to you on that. Right now, I want to shift back to Tesla, very much in the news as it becomes the second biggest U.S. automaker by market value. Craig Trudell from Bloomberg News joining us here in our Interactive Broker Studios. How does this make sense on a relative value perspective when it comes to the output of the Fords and the GMs of the world?
Well, and it's actually the second biggest globally. They're behind only Toyota now, past Volkswagen.
So the biggest U.S.
They've been for a while now worth more than GM and Ford combined, which is another just sort of mind blowing thing to drop. Exactly. But to your question on the relative value basis, I mean, one of the more charitable comparisons you can make here, just to Volkswagen, who they just passed up today, is Volkswagen sold roughly 30 cars for every one that Tesla delivered last year, and again, that's one of the more charitable. You look at how much more money Volkswagen makes, how much more cash they have, how much more free cash flow they're able to generate, but for all of the sort of absurdities of the comparisons of these two companies on a relative value basis, you even have Herbert Diess, the CEO of Volkswagen, recently sort of rallying the troops and saying, that cars are becoming, connected, sort of the ultimate mobile device, in his words, and that in that sense, we talk a lot about Tesla and being sort of on the cutting edge of electrification, but Elon Musk overnight was tweeting back and forth with his followers about being able to play Minecraft on your Tesla. So even Volkswagen is sort of taking a look at Tesla and really sort of pointing to these factors as being behind why the market is valuing them so high.
Craig Trudell, thank you so much for stopping in, sharing your thoughts on Tesla. We really appreciate it. Craig Trudell, Bloomberg News, covers all things auto, has been covering, obviously, Tesla very closely. The stock is up 4.2% today, $570 a share. Market cap about $103 billion. All-time high today for the stock for a company that is not forecasted to make a profit this year, but investors are focusing on the long-term growth of the electric vehicle market, and Tesla certainly has a first-mover advantage, and the bulls are obviously saying this is a company that can grow into this market. We'll have more for you on Tesla. This is Bloomberg.
Not in my 20 years of being a newsagent have I seen my shop so buzzing. And it's all because it's a double rollover tonight. I've even set some confetti off to celebrate. My customers can't get enough of it. So come on, don't miss it.
Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sale is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sale. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Another day, another stock market record. Coming up, we're going to be talking about how we do see that just grind higher day after day. Plus, we're just getting some economic data on the housing market that beat expectations. We'll dig in to figure out where the bright spots are. Right now, though, let's head over to our own John Tucker for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Yeah, well, let's start off with that. The December existing home sales rising to an annual rate of 5.4 million. Analysts were expecting 5.43 million, so a beat there. As you said, Lise, records watched today. The S&P 500, NASDAQ, they've crossed records. They're still waiting for the Dow, but they're all off. The Dow Jones Industrial Average 100 points higher. That's up 0.3%, 29,296. S&P 500 14 points higher. That's up 0.4 at 33.35. NASDAQ up 60. That's up 0.7 at 94.31. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Harvard economics professor Carmen Reinhart tell Bloomberg the economy is not too hot, not too cold.
We're actually at a sweet spot. It looks like growth is fairly good, not, exceptional. Inflation remains pretty subdued.
Well, technology shares leading the advance on the broader market after China took steps to contain the spread of that deadly virus that rattled international markets. IBM rallying after revenue beat estimates. And Tesla's market value soaring past $100 billion. That tops Volkswagen for the first time. This Bloomberg Business Flash being brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, providing industry partners with commercially focused research and innovation services through its New Jersey Innovation Institute. More at njii.com. And once again, the Dow's up 92 points. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Lisa and Paul.
Hey, John, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Again, as John was reporting, green on the screen, a risk-on day today. Let's get a sense of where the action is in the equity markets. We bring in Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at right now?
Well, you look at some of the earnings reports. John Tucker mentioned IBM, and clearly they're at the forefront of gains among technology stocks, top performers on the day. Among the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500, IBM up 4%. It's a real contrast in a sense to what we've seen with past earnings reports where, there's a tendency for disappointment. And actually, it's funny. I'm actually looking at IBM's track record. For the last 2 years, it's like, they've risen after one report and fallen after the next one. And so this is another example of that. The big thing this time around, IBM made that deal for Red Hat last year, $33 billion worth. And it seems to be paying off in terms of their software business. So that's a plus. And you've got IBM leading the gains. And then you can find some other well-received earnings reports. Capital One in banking, Abbott Labs in healthcare. And there are, of course, other examples that didn't go over so well. Netflix being the notable example. People weren't sure what to make of those fourth quarter results because you had pluses and minuses. It looks like the minuses are really carrying the day now. Stocks down more than 3%. Their U.S. subscriber growth came up short.
I'm looking at Tesla. I'm just trying to understand it. Honestly, I'm just struggling to understand the math of not necessarily whether they can make money or the idea that Elon Musk is a visionary who has provided a lot of really amazing ideas, both and actually put into effect quite a number of them. But the idea that it has a higher market value than a car maker that sold 30 times, as many vehicles last year. I'm just trying to square the math, Dave. Can you help me?
Well, if you think about it, it's almost like with Tesla, what we used to see back in the 90s with internet stocks, that it wasn't necessarily about how they were doing now. There was so much promise and things were going to be great down the line. They'd make money hand over fist, and for a fair number of those internet companies that didn't pan out. And so, you have to raise the question of whether history is kind of repeating itself with Tesla at this point. They did make money in their latest quarter. Okay. And it's clear that electric cars are sort of the future to some extent. But how much?
Well, but this raises a really interesting question, right? There have been a number, or back in the internet stocks, there were most of them went bust, right? You could say most of them went bust.
Either that or their market values never recovered the peaks. Think about a Cisco Systems as an example of the latter.
But then you had an Amazon, then you had a Facebook, then you had some of these others that were home runs.
Well, Amazon certainly, though, you think about, there aren't so many home runs, at least by today's standards. Sure, eBay's doing okay, but think about Yahoo. It just sort of been broken up and sold over the years. So, you've got that going on. And I guess at this point, it's just a matter of, how much further can this go? There's clearly a whole lot of excitement behind Tesla, with their expansion into China, with their plans for a pickup truck, with the fact that, like I said, they did make money in their third quarter. Now the challenge is, how do you look at this company being given the run up in the shares, given the relatively extreme valuation, which, by the way, we should note works to CEO Elon Musk's favor, because if Tesla can stay above $100 billion, he's going to get the first part of his pay package from 2018. And that part alone, something like $346 million.
Good I'm looking at the FA function on the Bloomberg Terminal Financial Analysis and looking at consensus estimates from Wall Street for 2020. Actually, Street's looking for a $1.1 billion net profit, doubling, a little bit more than doubling in 2021, almost doubling again in 2022. So at least Wall Street at this point is looking for a ramp in profitability, which the company has not delivered profits to date. So, perhaps that's a little bit of an inflection point. Perhaps the bulls think that this is a company that can, over time grow into its valuation.
Yeah, and if they're growing that fast at this point, how long does the growth keep going? And that's why, if you think about why Amazon became, Amazon as we know it today, because they were able to sustain above average growth rates. So, the analysts are looking at the next couple of years and saying Tesla's going to be growing like off the charts.
Right.
So,
and there's a caveat here that with Amazon, the overhead isn't that, it's not as great. And yes, you have the warehouses and you have everything like that, but you don't have necessarily the same kind of production thresholds that you would for an auto manufacturer, where it really is an industrial company at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a capital-intensive business.
It's a capital-intensive business. I'm wondering just where we are in terms of earnings, because they have been trickling out. We got the banks. We got a number overnight. How far along are we? How are we doing?
We've got a ways to go. These are early days. Things don't really heat up until next week in terms of S&P 500 reports. But I'll tell you, after the first week, you actually saw numbers come down. Analysts looking more like a 2% drop in profit for the S&P 500 as it stands in terms of the fourth quarter. So, we'll see if that turns around at all once we get more results out.
And still for the year, Dave, the Street's looking consensus, I guess, is still for 8, 9, 10% kind of earnings
Absolutely. I mean, that quarter-by-quarter improvement they're anticipating this year. And by the time you get to the fourth quarter, those numbers have actually been moving up. Analysts now expecting S&P 500 earnings to be up something like 15%.
Well, a lot of strategists are saying, that those numbers better come through because the performance we saw in the stock market last year was really driven by multiple expansion as opposed to earnings growth. So if there's going to be, continued growth in the stock market this year, upward movement in the stock market, it's got to be driven by earnings. So we'll see if those numbers can come through. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thanks so much for bringing that color to us. Earnings starting to come in, and the Tesla is kind of the stock news of the day. It's just an amazing round number that gets people's attention, and it's a name that inspires so much passion on both sides, long and short.
It's a faith stock.
Totally, yes.
It's a faith stock, and it's either faith in hatred or faith in love. I mean, really,
exactly.
It's really, there's not really another way to put it.
Yeah, when you talk to technology analysts, they're generally bullish on it. When you talk to auto analysts, they're bearish on it because they say, hey, making cars is tough, bending metal's tough. We don't see these kind of valuations very often. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. to Nathan Hager for world and national headlines. Nathan.
Paul, thank you. President Trump is headed back to Washington after touting the U.S. economy and pushing trade at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. He's headed back to an impeachment fight that he says he would like to see include witnesses. But when it comes to figures like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo...
It's a national security problem. I'd love to have Rick Perry. Rick Perry has asked me, I'd love to testify. Please let me testify. Because he knows this is all a hoax. He understands it better than most.
And just in, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he would comply if asked to testify. Speaking to reporters while traveling in Jamaica, Pompeo says he is not monitoring the impeachment trial. President Trump also says the head of the World Trade Organization will visit Washington soon to discuss the developing nation tag on China. He also says he'll add more countries to the travel ban that is still being fought out in the courts. The death toll is now up to 17 from the coronavirus outbreak in China. Confirmed infections are now up to 444, and cases are reported in the U.S., Mexico, Macau, and Hong Kong. 5 major U.S. airports are screening international arrivals, but for Dr. Nancy Messonnier at the Centers for Disease Control...
Equally important is making sure that we educate travelers and that we educate clinicians.
The World Health Organization is holding an emergency meeting today to decide whether to declare it a public health emergency of international concern. Founding Monty Python member Terry Jones has died after a long battle with a rare form of dementia. Fellow Python John Cleese is leading the tributes on Twitter, writing in part, 2 down, 4 to go. Terry Jones was 77 years old. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Revisions, return policies. There are so many ways to redo a decision.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Do they have any path other than the courts?
Except here, we have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war. Are there winners?
So that you can too.
How does your modeling have to pivot to reflect a different scenario?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking. Now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
Are you...
fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class, skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run, mix it.
Not in my 20 years of being a newsagent have I seen my shop so buzzing. And it's all because it's a double rollover tonight. I've even set some confetti off to celebrate. Our customers can't get enough of it. So come on, don't miss it.
Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with P.
People.
No, parrot.
I'll have to remember my binoculars next time.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Every time you fill up and use Shell Go Plus, you'll be protecting and replanting forests around the world. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Fly with Cathay Pacific and arrive ready to make the most of the endless white beaches of Bali. Book now at cathaypacific.com. Cathay Pacific. Move beyond.
Harry Bikers here. This message goes out to something very special.
Yes, we're talking to you, chicken.
Maybe we've been seeing too much of each other.
But times have changed, Dave.
We've been cheating on meat.
Thing is, Norse stocks make veggie dishes so irresistible that cheating on meat is proper tasty.
Oh, dear chicken, you were the fire in my life. But it's all about you now, aubergine katsu curry. Prepare to be wined and dined, my love.
Cheat on meat with no veggie stocks.
On a TUI tour, our English-speaking local guides will take you off the tourist trail. They won't just help you find the perfect souvenir, they'll show you how to make it. Choose from over 70 unforgettable tours worldwide. From tranquil temples in India to sunrise safaris in South Africa. On a TUI tour, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Book now and enjoy up to £200 off per booking. Booking T's and C's and minimum spend applies. Selected holidays only. At all protected.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Stocks are rising today, boosted by a rally in shares of technology companies. As for the major averages, S&P 500, NASDAQ, record territory right now. The S&P 500, 11 points higher. 3,332, and the NASDAQ Composite Index up 49 points. That's up 0.5%. We're at 94.19. The Dow Jones Industrial Average 86 points higher, 29,283. International business machines rising over 3% after unexpectedly reporting a slight gain in fourth quarter revenue, ending a streak of declining sales. And as far as the economic goes today. Sales of previously owned U.S. homes jumping in December to the best pace in nearly 2 years. Historically low interest rates, well, they continue to lure buyers despite record low inventory. Contract closings, they rose 3.6% from the prior month. So that works out to an annual rate of 5.54 million homes. And we check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
We had some housing data come out today. U.S. existing home sales rise to their best pace since early 2018, indicating once again that the consumer continues to power the U.S. economy along. We are very happy to have our next guest, Doug Duncan, good friend of the show, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist for Fannie Mae, usually based in Washington, D.C., but we dragged him up here to New York City to the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. So, Doug, it seems like every time we chat with you, we have more, I'm not going to say great, but certainly solid housing data. What do you make of the existing home sale data that came out today?
Well, it's consistent with our forecast. We think 2020 is going to be a good year. The consumer is well positioned. You've seen lower income groups see rising income growth relative to middle and upper income groups, and that's where the first-time home buyers are. In the millennial group, which are driving the demand for homes, they won't peak in terms of their household formation for another 6 years. So depending on what the economy does under that, we still have a good run to go in housing. And we're still building 250,000 units less than demographics would suggest annually.
Well, there's been a tension in the housing market that there are a growing number of people who want starter homes, and those starter homes are getting more and more expensive. How is that conundrum getting resolved in order to keep these numbers going forward?
Yeah, it's kind of a fight between the boomers and the millennials, if you will. Not that I'm trying to foment social discord.
Please, go ahead. It's all right.
But the boomers are doing what they said they're going to do. They're aging in place. And that's usually where the turnover comes that makes existing homes available to the first-time buyer. And it's the move-up buyer who buys what the builder is building. So this is a challenge for builders to make money building starter homes. That's not their traditional role. They're making progress. Our expectation is you see probably about a 5% growth this year in new home sales, which the square footage they're building has been falling for about 3 years. So they're trying to move toward that entry-level buyer. But still, there's got to be turnover among the boomers in order to really come back to normal relationships in the housing market.
Turnover. What is that? What does that mean? I mean, really, dig in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it means when the kids have moved out, while you may want to keep a bedroom or two in case they come home and bring the grandkids, you probably don't need 5 bedrooms. Right?
Interesting. So are there regions of the country that is it fairly consistent across the country where we're seeing decent household formation and home sales, or are there regions that are maybe worrying you to some degree?
Well, we've been studying the issue of mobility, asking the question, if housing is too expensive for entry-level workers to be able to afford a house near where they work, will businesses start moving their location to where housing is more affordable? And there is significant anecdotal evidence of that, and also starting to be some valid evidence of that in the data, that businesses are relocating.
Although, in fairness, I have spoken anecdotally to some executives at companies that have tried to move away from New York to other places, in particular some southern cities, and have struggled to find the talent. And I'm wondering, does this sort of foretell further stability in, say, a New York City market or a San Francisco market, despite all of the threats that everyone's going to move away because it's just too expensive?
Yeah, I think there's, in some sense, instead of incremental additions to those already expensive and heavily populated metros, the incremental adds are going elsewhere. One story, for example, is if you look at where Boise was 10 years ago compared to where Boise is today, that's absolutely all outflow from higher cost areas. And Boise's huge, 850,000 people in that metro. That's a poster child for that kind of migration. It's not going to happen everywhere. Core businesses will still remain in New York City, but the additional, if you can open another office somewhere else in that business, That's what you're seeing. Some of the West Coast tech companies, they're moving a part of their business to Utah, Salt Lake, or to Reno, or to Phoenix, or someplace where housing is more affordable.
Doug, what's your overall economic outlook for 2020? Are you in that camp that's kind of 2% kind of GDP growth?
We think a sustainable non-inflationary growth rate for the economy is between 2 and 2.25, and we'll be in that range this year. A little bit slower than last year. Boeing will have something to do with that. That will be a number that will slow the headline numbers a little bit.
How's the housing market in Fargo-Moorhead, North Dakota?
It's very well. It's a very affordable place, and if you have a child to send to a university, there's an excellent
North Dakota State University.
It's affordable and good quality.
And you're
education.
Totally objective, right?
I am totally
100%.
objective. Absolutely,
yes,
as an alumni.
As an alumnus. And I say this, actually, I am going to be heading to North Dakota State University in April.
And why? April, not January, I see.
No. Although it's still going to be pretty. Although it's still going to be pretty.
April and Fargo is. Yeah,
they'll all be in shorts and t-shirts.
They're about 2 weeks in between winter and summer. That's which case it's nice. No, it's going to be fun. I actually started my career at Fargo, North Dakota, so I'm going back
reporter.
As a cub reporter. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for being with us, Doug Duncan. Always wonderful having you here, Doug Duncan, chief economist at Fannie Mae, joining us with this better than expected data yet again on the U.S. housing market. I do want to bring you just some breaking news that Le Maire is saying that France and the U.S. have agreed on a global digital tax framework. There still needs to be a bunch of details ironed out here, such as the basis for the tax.
I wonder if this is the 2020 that was already reported, or is this something new and maybe longer standing? I'm not sure.
Well, basically saying that this Trump and Macron call, because there was a call between the leaders of the two countries, that it was decisive in calming tension. So regardless, it appears that some of the friction here has been taken off the table, despite some of the hawkish rhetoric from President Trump earlier this morning. We're going to have more on that coming up. I'm Lisa Abramowitz with Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks higher after China took steps to contain the spread of the deadly respiratory virus. Beijing said it will start a nationwide screening effort to tackle the outbreak. More problems for Boeing and the 737 MAX. The company said the plane won't be cleared to fly until the middle of this year. That's at least 6 months later than previously expected. There were 2 recent setbacks. A software flaw on the MAX will require more work than expected, and an audit found some wiring issues. The main lobbyist for drug makers spent a record $29 million last year. That's according to a filing from the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. The trade group pushed back on legislation meant to control the price of medicine. And on this day, 2 years ago, President Trump fired the starting gun in the trade war. He imposed higher tariffs on solar equipment and washing machines. It came after repeated threats to crack down on what he called unfair foreign competition. Courtney Dunn, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team? Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry. Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
On the goal line, scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
Hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Move, and a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Broadcast from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, China is banning plastic bags, and that could be a big blow to oil companies. Plus, we're going to talk to Jack Ablin of Crescent Capital Management on his thoughts on the markets for 2020. But first, let's go to John Tucker of Bloomberg News. Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Yeah, Paul and Lisa, U.S. stocks, they're rising on speculation that respiratory illness that emerged from China is going to be all that bad, or at least not as bad as initially feared. You also have better than forecast corporate earnings lifting optimism. The dollar edging lower. Oil is falling. We have the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, record territory there. Constant Hunter, the economist at KPMG, says the deadly respiratory virus still bears close watching by investors.
I think if the proper measures are put in place, there's no need to panic. On the other hand, it bears watching, and it's certainly an area of concern because China can ill afford to have anything slowing its growth at this point.
And that data that we just got this morning, sales of previously owned homes put in the strongest performance in almost 2 years. Low mortgage rates, luring buyers. December sales advancing at the fastest pace since February of 2018. All suggest that housing is going to support growth for the second quarter in a row and cushion the economy from any subdued business investment. Dow Jones Industrial Average right now up 110 points. That's a rise of 0.4%. We're at 29,306. The S&P 500 14 points higher at 3335. The NASDAQ Composite Index 59 points higher. That's up 0.6 at 94.30. And we check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
We're going to check in with our Bloomberg Opinion columnists right now. It is that time we do. We're going to get a hot take on plastic bags. It is not the hot take I would have imagined. Liam Denning, Bloomberg Opinion columnist. A lot of people would be talking about the bans in places, including New York City, actually upcoming. But certainly China, which is bigger than New York City, is, we talk about it from an environmental perspective. Liam Denning, no, you are coming at it as this is a problem for the oil companies. Please explain.
Well, I don't do hot takes.
Wow. No reason not to start right now.
So this is a problem, you can look at it in two ways. One is a kind of simple math problem, which is, if you have a plastic bag ban that leads to lower demand for plastics, can hit oil demand, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the real problem for the oil industry is more of a narrative problem. And that is that what we've seen in the last few years is the kind of the growth narrative around oil has changed. So you go back a bit. The main growth narrative for oil was, more Chinese people, more Indian people are going to be driving more cars, gasoline demand is going to go up, diesel demand is going to go up, et cetera, et cetera. That's taken a bit of a knock in recent years, partly because of efficiency measures, mainly because of expectations that electric vehicles will take more market share over time. So what we've seen is the growth narrative has shifted towards another part of the market, a smaller part of the market called petrochemicals, and in particular the demand for plastics, because in a twist on the old story, more Chinese people and more Indian people will be using more plastic. So when China says, actually for a large part of the country, we're going to curb use of single-use plastics, that hits that growth narrative. And in a report that BP put out last year, they actually had a scenario where they said, what happens if curbs on single-use plastics tighten more than we expect, leading to an outright ban worldwide by 2040. And under that scenario, oil demand peaks in the late 2020s, which now that we're in 2020 doesn't actually seem that far off to most of us. And so that is where it's a problem for the oil industry. It's less about this will take X number of barrels off the market. It's more we have an industry that one by one is seeing its long-term growth avenues get closed off or appear to be called into question. And that's a problem in today's terms because that raises your cost of capital, makes it harder for these companies to invest, puts more pressure on them to raise their dividends because investors want cash now rather than promises of growth tomorrow.
Liam, what's single-use plastic?
So single-use plastic is, let's face it, that fairly terrible stuff that we all use where we, take a plastic bag, we use it once, we throw it away. We take maybe an item of food that's wrapped in cling film, we tear it off and throw it away. Roughly 40% of plastic production is packaging, and about 95% of that by value gets thrown away after its first use. The way to think about plastic is plastic itself is obviously not a bad thing. We use it in lots of ways. It's indispensable in a lot of things, particularly, for example, like sterile kind of medical devices and that sort of thing. But our use of it for single use and for plastics has clearly raced ahead of our ability to recycle it. And it's clearly something that has to be dealt with because it's a huge contribution to pollution.
How big of a component of the profitability of big oil are these single-use plastics?
Well, it's hard to isolate single-use plastics, but one way to think about this is to look at the money that big oil is investing in petrochemicals, much of which is diverted towards plastics. Bernstein did a report on this recently. It looked at the largest oil companies in the world, It estimates that they're investing over the next 5 years somewhere between $34 and $39 billion a year, which, if you think about it, over the course of 5 years is like building the fixed asset base of a super major, Chevron Corp. So they're putting a lot of money into this. Now, we talk a lot about stranded assets in oil with regards to climate change and the idea that oil will be left underground because of, hitting carbon limits. But if you think about it, a new petrochemical plant may not be stranded entirely, may not, go to zero. But if that plant is only running at, say, 60% of capacity, that's going to be a terrible investment.
Liam Denning, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate your
Not a
thoughts.
hot take.
No,
that was a very thoughtful take.
Exactly, which is what we've come to expect from Liam. Liam Denning, energy mining columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. You could read Liam's opinion work as well as all of the other Bloomberg Opinion columnists by going to bloomberg.com/opinion or typing in OPIN GO.
1967. That was when The Graduate was first released.
Yes.
Plastics.
The future.
The future.
Son,
right.
Here's one word. Plastics.
Right. And it's like, now that's might not be the case.
That might not be the case. Now I just tell my kids.
In 2020.
Go west, young man. Go out to Silicon Valley. That's where the smart people are. Not so much on Wall Street again
not
anymore.
Right here.
No, exactly. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, the one word here is impeachment. No new motions have been filed. Opening arguments are set to begin in less than 2 hours in the Senate trial of President Trump. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, the president says he would prefer a long trial so witnesses could testify, but some, like former National Security Advisor John Bolton, he says, could pose a national security risk.
He knows some of my thoughts. He knows what I think about leaders. What happens if he reveals what I think about a certain leader and it's not very positive and then I have to deal on behalf of the country? It's going to be very hard. It's going to make the job very hard.
The president put Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in that category as well. But Pompeo, speaking to reporters in Kingston, Jamaica, says if he's legally required to do so, he would be, quote, happy to testify. The president is also calling for dramatic changes at the World Trade Organization. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports.
President Trump says he started talks with WTO Director General Roberto Azevedo on changing the structure of the body, which he complains has been unfair to the U.S., and says they're discussing something, quote, very dramatic.
China's viewed as a developing nation. India is viewed as a developing nation. We're not viewed as a developing nation. As far as I'm concerned, we're a developing nation, too.
Azevedo will travel to the U.S. for the negotiation. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
United Nations experts are calling for an investigation into the hacking of Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos' cell phone. This follows reports that spyware was installed during a WhatsApp conversation between Bezos and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman 2 years ago. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SCI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm
Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
In-depth analysis.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sail is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sail. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
Got big plans for 2020? Capture and share every highlight on a gorgeous iPhone 11 with an ultra-wide camera. In Tesco Mobile's big January sale, you can get the latest iPhone for £40.75 a month with double data. That's a mighty 20 gigs. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 26th of January. Was 10 gigs, now 20 gigs. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Want to kit out your new kitchen for less? Get to B&Q. We've 20% off all kitchen sinks, taps and appliances when you spend £2,500 on a beautifully designed and affordable good home kitchen. Hurry! Offer ends 2nd of February. You can do it when you B&Q it. In-store orders only. Maximum 10 appliances. Excludes clearance. See DIY.com.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom. It is Bloomberg Business Flash on a day when two of the major averages are in record territory. S&P 500 right now up 16 points, up 0.5%. We're at 3337. The NASDAQ Composite Index, the tech-heavy NASDAQ, is 68 points higher. That's up about 0.75% at 9438. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 117 points at 29,314. Again, technology shares leading the advance on the broader market index. This comes after China took some steps to contain the spread of a deadly virus. IBM, that's looking at a rally today. Revenue beat estimates there. Tesla's market value soaring past $100 billion, so that means it's topping Volkswagen for the first time. And as we look at Treasury's 10-year yield right now, 176. Price is up by 2/32 right now. And Brent crude is down $1.22, 63.37 for the international benchmark for oil. That's down about 1.9%. We have gold down $2.60 at $15.55.30 an ounce. Also, it's worth noting volatility is down today, as measured by the VIX, down about 3.7%. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, it is another risk-on day today. We have equity indices in the green, continuing what has been a good start to the year following a fantastic 2019 in terms of returns for risk assets. The question a lot of investors have right now is, how should I think about 2020 in terms of expectations for returns in the equity and credit markets? To help us answer that question, we welcome our good friend Jack Ablin, founding partner and chief investment officer of Crescent Capital Management with over $5 billion in assets under management. He joins us on the phone from Chicago. Jack, thanks so much for joining us. So it's been a good start to a 2020, a kind of a continuation of what we saw in the fourth quarter of 2019. How are you framing out your outlook for 2020?
Yeah, I would say at least the fundamental backdrop, probably more of the same. We have a, rather sanguine interest rate environment. We've got moderate growth. Things, at least the geopolitical and trade issues seem to be lining up and falling into place. So I think you're absolutely right. It just seems like more or less a continuation of the last quarter of last year.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this morning, Bridgewater's co-chief investment officer, Bob Prince, said not only will there be sort of more of the same, but that the boom-bust economic cycle is over. Do you agree?
I'd love to be able to agree with that. But I also heard that when he said it this morning, and I also heard the chief investment officer of Guggenheim say there was a Ponzi scheme. So, maybe we have to split the difference and say maybe there will be a business cycle. I would tend to agree that there are excesses, okay? And I think Scott was saying how, the central banks kind of stumble from one crisis to the next as they, create, dislocations, and then ultimately we have to pay for these dislocations.
Scott Minard of Guggenheim Securities.
Scott Minard. And the current dislocation is artificially low interest rates. And I think even, Bridgewater agreed that the fair value for a benchmark treasury should be 4.5%, not 2%. And so I think that, how do we get back to that fair value without creating problems? I have probably politically, but I don't see how, the markets will do that.
So, Jack, as we think about our positioning for 2020, what are some of the sectors that you like right here, given what we've experienced over the last, 12 plus months?
Sure. It really depends on your time frame. If you're looking to try to, eke out a solid return in equities over the next little cycle here, that's going to be, in my view, pretty difficult, given where our expectations are. Generally what we want from what we call our growth strategy, which is essentially requires a 90% certainty of making money over any 7-year holding period. We no longer have that certainty. As of probably the middle of last year, that 90% certainty fell slightly below into the low to mid 80s because of valuations. And so for that reason, we have taken some of the risk off the table in equities. We've shifted into what we'll call non-correlated or low beta equity. And if we can get a 15% or more pullback in equities, then that 90% certainty number pops back up, and we can redeploy what we would call that dry powder back into a long equity position. So that's kind of the shorter term. Longer term, I would say thematic. We're big thematic investors, global themes, that we don't really care about the market cycle if we're willing to hold for 15 years or more.
So you said that your dry powder is being held in non-correlated equities. What is a non-correlated equity?
Sure. So it could be anything from, a hedge fund or hedged equity. It could be option writing strategy, anything that has a little bit of equity beta that will follow the market in general, but is really muted. So it's certainly going to trail if we have a big upside move in the stock market, but will also not really drop as much if we get a pullback.
So, Jack, as you think about your 2020 outlook and maybe into maybe longer term, do you have a recession, a meaningful odds of a recession in your scenario at all?
I don't. I mean, I do think that, my main concern is, corporate credit. If you look at non-financial debt as a percentage of GDP, we're at a high that we've never seen in our nation's history. I believe it's 30% of GDP now is allocated to non-financial corporate debt. It makes sense. I mean, the fact is, borrowing has been extremely easy. Spreads are remarkably low. So financing, lenders are tripping over themselves to put money to work. And if the one lens that allows equities to look cheap is through the lens of bonds, and we saw $300 billion of buybacks last year. So I do think that, unless rates continue to drop and continue to feed this market, I don't expect much PE expansion this year. I think at best we're going to track along earnings growth, which right now, could be as much as 9 or 10%. And at worst, if we get a Minsky moment where investors look and say, well, how overvalued is this market? We could get a 15% pullback.
Jack Ablin, thank you so much for being with us. Really interesting to hear what you have to say. We really appreciate it. Meanwhile, right now, Jack Ablin, founding partner and chief investment officer of Crescent Capital Management with more than $5 billion under management. I'm just right now crunching the numbers of the percent of GDP that just investment grade corporate debt is. Actually, if you take a look, the market value of the Bloomberg Barclays U.S. corporate investment grade index is $4.5 trillion. Okay. And the GDP, the annual GDP of the U.S. is $20.5 trillion. So kind of a substantial amount, more than 20%.
I was just looking at an article on the Bloomberg Terminal today about another busy week for investment grade issue in cities in the marketplace.
And why not? Because yields are at their lowest right now for that market since 2013, and the junk bond market since 2014, near all-time record lows. A great time if you're a company that needs to borrow. Question is, if you are a lender, do you want to be doing it at these levels? I'm Lisa Abramowitz, along with my co-host and colleague Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
That saying?
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, A sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
The world 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Where's your views on the municipal bond landscape?
The market does not like uncertainty, does not react well to uncertainty.
There's a whole lot of optimism around the valuation of Uber.
What is Ford saying about the self-driving car?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Maybe we're getting hooked on debt and low interest rates.
The black hole called power could be a bigger black hole.
A toxic brew of slower revenue growth.
There is now this belief that Amazon maybe can do anything.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at Boeing. It can't be good news, can it? No, it's another delay for the 737 MAX. We'll dig into that. Plus, we're going to take a look at a fascinating story. The Saudi crown prince implicated in the hack of Jeff Bezos' phone. We'll have the latest. But first, let's go to John Tucker, Bloomberg News, for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Yeah, and Paul, stocks are higher right now. Shortly after the opening bell, all the major averages were higher. Digesting a slew of quarterly corporate earnings results, IBM operating non-GAAP earnings per share of $471 US dollars on revenue of $21.8 billion. Both of those numbers top Wall Street expectations. The company also said it expects this year's operating earnings per share to reach about $13.35. IBM shares, they are climbing today. So far, more than 10% of the S&P 500 companies have posted their latest quarterly results. Of those companies, 75% have posted better than forecast earnings. Some economic data. Sales of previously owned U.S. homes jumping in December to the best pace in nearly 2 years. Doug Duncan, chief economist at Fannie Mae, reacted to that report earlier on the program.
That's consistent with that forecast. We think 2020 is going to be a good year. The consumer is well positioned. You've seen lower income groups see rising income growth relative to middle and upper income groups, and that's where the first-time home buyers are.
Contract closings rose 3.6%, from the prior month. S&P 500 right now up 10 points at 3331. NASDAQ Composite Index up 51 points. We're at 9,422. And the Dow's 62 points higher at 29,258. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, John Tucker. Let's take a look at those small and mid-cap shares. I just find it so interesting. Yesterday, they seriously underperformed the large-cap indices. They were down 0.8%. Today, they're trying to catch up and failing, but they are sort of exceeding, but still failing. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor. Go ahead.
You know, I actually mentioned yesterday on the Bloomberg Business Week program your obsession with these smaller companies trailing the larger ones, and indeed, that is the case today.
Obsession, yes.
The Russell 2000 index higher by about 0.2%. Trouble is, the S&P 500 is up 0.3%. So indeed, the smaller companies are trailing again. That said, one of the Russell's biggest gains belongs to Express, whose ticker is EXPR. The apparel retailer has risen 15%. Express will close 100 stores over 3 years to cut costs. Axia Therapeutics, ticker AKCA, has advanced 11.5%. The company's proposed treatment for a blood disorder had favorable results in a second-stage study. Now, Axia is a unit of Ionis Pharmaceuticals, ticker IONS, and that stock's up 4.4%. Franklin Financial Network, ticker FSB, has climbed 10.5%. The bank agreed to a takeover by FB Financial that's valued at $611 million. FB's ticker was FBK, and that stock down about 2%. The Russell's steepest drop belongs to Novavax, ticker NVAX. The vaccine developers lost about 19% after filing to sell as much as $100 million of stock. Now, Novavax soared yesterday by 71% on its plans for a coronavirus vaccine. And Blueprint Medicines, ticker BPMC, has fallen 8%. The cancer drug developer is raising $325 million in a share sale.
Bloomberg Stocks Editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Looking at the shares of Boeing, another difficult day. The stock is down 1.3%. I went back and took a look at the chart, down about 30% from its March 2019 high.
I love how you put that there. There's more news about Boeing. You know, could it be good?
Yes.
No, it's not.
No, it is not. And George Ferguson covers all things Boeing and aerospace and airlines for Bloomberg Intelligence. He joins us on the phone. George, thanks so much for joining us. I feel like we've talked about this for a long time now, i.e. another delay. Give us the latest on what's going on at Boeing.
Yes, good morning, and thanks for having me on. So, what we heard yesterday was the company came out and announced that they saw a time frame for the MAX return to fleets not earlier than June or July of this year. I mean, I really think that what's starting to happen is you've got the new CEO in there, Calhoun, and I think he's starting to move, as some people might say, the goalposts. He's starting to move the achievement goalposts on the MAX back a bit. I think it's probably the right thing to do. I hope they're starting to be more conservative about those goalposts. I think if, that may be part of the strategy is let's move this back to a point where we think we can actually get this done by and not have the market on pins and needles waiting for a February, March reauthorization to fly the airplane in U.S. airspace. And I think the fact that you saw the FAA announce at the same time or minutes afterwards that there was no timetable for return of the MAX was a sign that Boeing had talked to the FAA about their plan to bring forward this, their timetable, and the FAA, still wants to say, hey, look, however long it takes us to do this, is how long it takes us to do this. So we got no timetable.
When it comes to Boeing as an investment, I'm looking at the shares down 12% over the past 12 months, and this certainly has been a huge stock problem for, I don't even want to say huge. It's been a stock problem for them on the margins. They've been borrowing money, meanwhile, from banks, billions of dollars, in order to shore up their balance sheet ahead of whatever they have to end up doing in terms of paying back, compensating airlines for the delayed delivery of the 737. I'm looking right now at the bond prices. They're up today, and they have been pretty steady. And I'm just trying to square the idea that from a credit-worthy perspective, this doesn't seem to be affecting Boeing, even though the stock is selling off a bit and not even that much at that. How do you explain the resilience in the assets of Boeing?
Sure. So I really think, if you're a creditor, the way you might look at Boeing right now is I think it's roughly around 400 airplanes in the ground. They're probably worth about $40+ million a piece. Right there is $16 billion worth of cash that's tied up in inventory. As long as you still believe that airplane is worth $40 million a piece, which we in our analysis we think the airplane is still viable, will fly in fleets. It's just going to take a little time here to get it back into service. Right there, $16 billion of cash flow that gets freed up once you start delivering airplanes. I think Boeing's added $10 to $15 billion worth of debt while the airplane's been grounded. I think if you look long term, you still have an industry dynamic where there are two primary players. It's Airbus and Boeing. And unfortunately, backlogs are so large that you can't get into the Airbus queue and get an airplane before 5 or 6 years from now. So if you're a Boeing customer, you're almost jammed, and you got to stay in the queue where you are, hope they get this resolved as quickly as possible, and start taking your airplanes. So I think as you look at the fundamental business, you could see once the airplane gets back in the fleets, Boeing is going to increase production rates. They've already said to 57 a month for the MAX. That's going to happen, we think now in 2021. They'll still be able to produce a lot of cash based on that. The challenge will be how much will they have to remunerate airlines for lost profits. I think at the end of the day, it'll be well over $10, $12, $13 billion. But in the long run, I think it's manageable, and it's a duopoly. The Chinese are trying to build their own airplane, but they're even delayed on it. So.
George Ferguson, thank you so much for being with us. George Ferguson, Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airlines Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. It all sounds really bad for Boeing, but there's no other game in town, so what else are you going to do? That's basically been the story for Boeing in the duopoly, Boeing and Airbus. Although Airbus did take the lead when it comes to deliveries, I believe, for the first time. Yep. They were trumping Boeing, if you will, briefly. So there is a question of whether they will gradually lose their dominance as a result of this. Right now in markets, we're looking at a rally that's steady, bleeding up to new highs. We're seeing the NASDAQ up 0.5%, the S&P 0.3%, and the Dow 0.2%. Bond steady. Right now, let's head to Washington, D.C., where things are perhaps a little more exciting. Nathan Hager. Nathan, what are you looking at?
Well, certainly looking at the impeachment trial of President Trump, Lisa, due to get back underway in less than 2 hours with opening arguments expected. Neither side has filed new motions, so we should start to hear the arguments laid out before the Senate jury today. Speaking from the World Economic Forum in Davos, President Trump says he'd prefer a longer trial to allow for witness testimony, including perhaps his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani.
I'd love to have Rudy on my team, but he could be a witness at some point if this whole sham continues. I would love to have Rudy on the team. Rudy is on my team, just so you understand. But I'd love to have him up there. But it could be that he'd have a conflict.
President Trump also says other potential witnesses like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo could pose a national security risk, though Pompeo says if he's legally required to do so, he would be happy to testify. Pompeo spoke to reporters who were traveling with him in Jamaica. The death toll from China's coronavirus is now up to 17. The number of confirmed cases has topped 500. The respiratory illness has spread to Hong Kong, Macau, possibly Mexico, and the U.S., where a patient traveled from Wuhan, where the outbreak began, to Seattle. Dr. Nancy Messonnier is with the Centers for Disease Control.
I think you're picturing Ebola with a spacesuit, and this is not that. This is a very typical respiratory isolation that hospitals have a lot of practice at.
The World Health Organization is holding an emergency meeting today to decide whether to declare the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
If you promise to cover the latest financial and business news from Asia,
we're talking about social enterprises in Asian countries
with expert analysts who really understand Asia,
aren't you encouraged with respect to U.S.-China trade?
Then you must be us.
Tell us about the trend within this part of the world.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
What sort of fiscal stimulus do you think we'll see?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the Lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance?
Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in it?
Not in my 20 years of being a newsagent have I seen my shop so buzzing. And it's all because it's a double rollover tonight. I've even set some confetti off to celebrate. My customers can't get enough of it. So come on, don't miss it.
Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number 1. So don't just run. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it. Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Dad, I'm doing the mashed potatoes too.
Do the Albert Bartlett potato mash.
Do the twist.
Do the patatas bravas with a British twist.
Yeah. Do the brown sauce, balsamic and chutney.
Oh, do the melting potato slices.
Do the dishes.
Grab a brand new recyclable bag today and do the Albert Bartlett.
He's got a brand new bag.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with P.
People.
No, parrot.
I'll have to remember my binoculars next time.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Every time you fill up and use Shell Go Plus, you'll be protecting and replanting forests around the world. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs. Keep me out the cold jobs. Advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs. East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs. Startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs. Or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use, and the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Fly with Cathay Pacific to over 70 destinations across Asia and Australia and move beyond the familiar. State-of-the-art cabins, world-class entertainment and award-winning service, making sure you arrive ready to make the most of whatever lies ahead. Whether it's the endless white beaches of Bali, the mesmerizing metropolis of Tokyo, or the bustling markets of Hanoi, book now at cathaypacific.com. Cathay Pacific. Move beyond.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Stocks are higher, but pairing some of their earlier gains, technology shares leading the advance on the S&P 500. All this comes after China took steps to contain the spread of that deadly virus that rattled international markets. You had IBM higher after revenue beat estimates. Some more data coming out. The Federal Reserve of Chicago out with its latest report on the national economy. The Chicago Fed's index continues to point toward nationwide moderation. So that is scoring its third negative reading in about 4 months. The index draws on 85 data points from jobs to industrial output. Only 27 of those improved in the month of December. Now, the Conference Board will issue its gauge of America's economic outlook tomorrow. The leading indicators, they haven't posted a gain since July. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average up only 4 points at 29,201. The S&P 500 up 6 points, 33.27. NASDAQ Composite Index, that's up 39 points at 9,410. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Paul, I'm trying to understand the significance of this story that came out earlier today. The United Nations experts now weighing in, saying that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was possibly involved in hacking the cell phone of Amazon.com CEO Jeff Bezos, and this was revealed after an Amazon investigation. This has to do with a WhatsApp account that was infiltrated, according to investigators, back in 2018. Greg Farrell here to give us a little bit more clarity. He's an investigative reporter for the legal enforcement team here at Bloomberg News. Greg, can you just sort of set the stage of what actually is alleged to have happened here?
Well, from what we know, after Jeff Bezos's, photos from his personal life that contributed to, or allowed,
with his mistress that led to divorce. Okay, carry on.
A year ago came out. His team started going through, like with a fine-tooth comb, everything. Clearly he had been hacked. Clearly stuff had been stolen from him, digital images, etc., from his personal devices. So that started the process. In addition to that, federal prosecutors in New York started looking to see if there was any involvement by the National Enquirer with, basically some, unlawful activity regarding this. Part of the investigation went through, chapter and verse, every interaction with what Bezos had. And then, so there's a criminal investigation in Manhattan here. Separately, at the United Nations, there are a group of people dedicated to, justice for extrajudicial killings who've been very focused on the murder of Jamal Khashoggi in October of 2018. They got involved with this as well. And they're the ones who put out a report today. And this is what the news reporting starting late last night indicated, is that their findings based on the forensic digital analysis of Bezos's phone, indicated lots of evidence that at the time in May of 2018, after a benign WhatsApp, transaction or WhatsApp message from the prince to Bezos, then suddenly afterwards there was this malignant, coded file that got in, something called Pegasus, which I don't understand, was placed in Bezos's phone and started exfiltrating massive amounts of data, far larger than the normal amounts of data that would normally come in and out of a phone.
So, Greg, do we have any sense of what Jeff Bezos would like to see happen? I mean, it looks like obviously his security was breached and it was obviously had implications for him, his personal life. But has he stated what he wants to happen if, in fact, the Crown Prince is guilty of this or did do this?
No, I think right now he's playing this carefully because there is a criminal investigation in New York into some of the conduct surrounding that. It's proceeded very slowly, but I think he's smart enough and he's getting the right advice not to get in front of it and decide what he wants to do, but to let the most important thing, the criminal investigation, proceed.
Is the UN investigation somehow implying a connection between the killing of Jamal Khashoggi and the Jeff Bezos hack or the leak of his personal information? Is that part of it, or was that?
Yeah, they're drawing that line. There's no proof that this led to that, but that's what these people at the UN are investigating. They're trying to get to the bottom of how and why and more details and hold those responsible for it, the killing of Khashoggi. So this is another element to that whole storyline that the Saudi government has started denying completely and then denied in part and then found some people to find guilty in a trial of sorts, a closed trial in Saudi Arabia earlier this year. And the UN people are staying on this.
And what's Jeff Bezos' connection to the Jamal Khashoggi case?
Well, just that Khashoggi worked for the Washington Post.
Okay.
And so the Washington Post, most of the major newspapers and news media in this country have been very supportive of efforts to get to the bottom of this, but no one more than the Washington Post, because he was one of them.
Greg, do we know whether the investigators are looking more broadly, or are they just looking at Jeff Bezos, or are there other prominent people that could be the targets of MBS's or the Saudi government's hacking of phones and things like that?
So two things there. One, we don't know what the prosecutors in Manhattan are doing. That seems pretty clear. It's focused on the hack and the National Enquirer and whether or not the Enquirer was culpable at all. And there's no evidence to suggest that there was. Separately, though, that's a much bigger question, and you've hit a very important point. Now that we know, with a high degree of confidence, but not absolute certainty, that some part, even if it wasn't the Crown Prince himself, but somebody in Saudi Arabia was interested in hacking into a prominent, wealthy American's phone, this opens up the question, well, what other prominent American officials or figures with close ties to the government, either the Trump administration or Congress or in the business community, who did a lot of dealings and had what they thought was a personal relationship, a WhatsApp relationship with the Crown Prince or other representatives of the Saudi ruler family. Has anybody else been hacked? And we just don't know yet. So that's the bigger issue here, is that has the Saudi government been doing this to a wide variety of people, and if so, whom?
Right, very interesting, fascinating story that I think is just developing here. Greg Farrell, investigative reporter for the legal enforcement team at Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio with that fascinating story of Jeff Bezos, the Washington Post, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, WhatsApp hacking. So interesting story. So I think this is probably, Lisa, something that's going to be developing over time.
Oh, I don't think this is the last that we've heard of this. If the UN panel is coming back with the same conclusion as Jeff Bezos's private investigators.
Yes, exactly. So just looking at
it up a level.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the markets real quickly, still green on screen, pulling back from the highs. The S&P up about 7, Dow up 9 points. NASDAQ a little bit stronger, up 41 points, a little bit more than about 0.4% for the tech-heavy NASDAQ. We'll have more market action coming up. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks in the green as China's looking to contain the virus outbreak in that nation. Authorities in Beijing have announced a nationwide screening program, a move that has eased some investor nerves about the virus becoming a rerun of the 2003 SARS epidemic. Johnson & Johnson shares falling after the healthcare giant's fourth quarter sales trailed estimates. Some former blockbusters continued to decline in the face of new competition, and its baby care business stumbled. Apple is planning to create original podcasts promoting the programming on its Apple TV video service. Sources said the company last summer sent out a request to podcast producers looking for ideas for audio programs related to its shows. And only 41% of adults have enough savings to cover a $1,000 emergency expense. That's according to Bankrate.com. The average cost of an unexpected expense is more than $3,500, and 28% of adults have experienced one in the past year. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Are you interested in it?
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
This is the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time he hops on a bus. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
On this week's On the Media, we peel away the many layers of the Warren Sanders sexism sideshow.
The first layer is, can we acknowledge that in a country that has only elected male presidents throughout its history, that gender is a factor?
Also, depressed by politics? We have a plan for that. Listen to On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch
your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in!
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to get the latest on the coronavirus, which has been spreading from China. We're going to be speaking with Tom Orlik, chief economist for Bloomberg Economics. Plus, a look ahead to the impeachment proceedings with Wendy Schiller, the chair of political science at Brown University. Right now, though, let's head over to our own John Tucker for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Yeah, and that's one of the factors that's impacting stocks today. Technology shares, they are leading the advance right now, the S&P 500. The major averages have pared back some of their earlier gains. The stocks are rising as there's signs that China took steps to contain the spread of that deadly virus that rattled international markets. IBM rallied after beating its estimates. And Harvard economics professor Carmen Reinhart, speaking to Bloomberg Surveillance earlier today from the World Economic Forum in Davos, says the economy is not too hot and not too cold.
We're actually at a sweet spot. It looks like growth is fairly good, not, exceptional. Inflation remains pretty subdued.
And the bulls are rallying around Tesla. Its market value is soaring past $100 billion. That tops Volkswagen for the first time. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average 16 points higher. That's at 29,212. The broader index, S&P 500 right now, about 8 points higher. That's up 0.3%. We're at 33.29. The Nasdaq Composite Index is up 47 points. That's up 0.5% at 94.17. 10-year yield right now, right at 177. No change in the price for the benchmark. Brent crude, the international benchmark for oil, is down 1.9% at 63.36 a barrel. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Lisa and Paul.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, as John Tucker was mentioning, markets are rallying slightly today on news that China is ramping up its efforts to contain the coronavirus that's killed at least 17 people and affected hundreds as the outbreak has spread beyond Asia. The question is, what does it mean for global economics? We welcome Tom Orlik. He's a chief economist for Bloomberg Economics, joining us from the Bloomberg 99.1 studio in Washington, D.C. Tom, you lived a long time in China. I wonder if you could give us a sense for kind of how this coronavirus compares to the SARS virus from about 17 years ago, because that certainly had some ripple effects for the economy.
So that's right, Paul. So if we go back to 2003 in that SARS outbreak, I think one of the critical factors was the slow pace of the government response. There was a failure to acknowledge the extent of the outbreak. There was an inability to move policies quickly to contain it. And what that meant was that actually the economic impact, whilst brief, was pretty severe. We saw GDP growth fall 2 percentage points from the first quarter of 2003 to the second quarter of 2003. The hope, as we are in 2020, is that the bitter lesson which China learned back in 2003 is going to enable them to be more transparent, quicker, more effective as they respond to this emerging threat from the coronavirus.
How do you game out the potential economic impact of a pandemic?
I mean, it's basically not possible to do, Lisa. So here we are in the very early stages of this disease, and It's not clear how it's going to develop. And so the best we can do is think about the moving parts and try and think about some scenarios. An important factor in our view is the way the Chinese economy has evolved over the last 16, 17 years. Back in 2003, the SARS outbreak had the biggest impact on the services sector. It hit tourism, it hit shopping, it hit people going to the restaurant, going to the cinema, and such like. But back in 2003, the services share of China's economy was really quite small. Here we are in 2020, and one of the big success stories for China in the last 2 decades has been this economic transition. They've managed to move away from industry. The services sector is now much more important. More people eating at restaurants, more people going to visit their friends and relatives, more people going to the cinema. But guess what? That means that if this coronavirus does expand, does spread, then potentially the economic impact is going to be significantly larger.
And interestingly, Hu Zhizhen, the editor of the Global Times, who's often thought of as a sort of a mouthpiece for Beijing, came out and acknowledged that there would be an economic hit, that people would be traveling less, buying fewer items amid this holiday. Are you expecting perhaps a bigger economic impact than might otherwise be seen, just because it just is going to have that kind of dampening effect, even though it is contained?
Yeah, I think you raise an important point, Lisa, and that is that the timing of this for China couldn't really be worse. We're about to hit Chinese New Year, and at Chinese New Year, what happens is literally hundreds of millions of people go home. Many Chinese people are migrants. They work in cities which are different from the cities they were born in. And Chinese New Year is the one point of the year where everyone puts down what they're doing, leaves the factory, leaves the office, gets on the train, gets on a bus, gets on an airplane, and goes to enjoy the Chinese New Year celebration with their family, in the same way that people do at Thanksgiving or Christmas here in the US and in the UK. So the concern could be that even if this virus is contained, even if it doesn't spread, just the mere timing of it is going to have a larger impact on economic activity because people cancel those plans.
Tom Morlick, thank you so much for being with us. Tom Morlick, chief economist for Bloomberg Economics, joining us from our Washington, D.C. studios. Really interesting. The coronavirus has been, at least it appears to be, somewhat more contained. There seems to be more confidence that it won't necessarily spread rampantly, and that the Chinese government is being more transparent this time around than the last time 17 years ago when the SARS epidemic was spreading much more than they had previously expected. But really interesting what Tom said, which is it hits services when there is a concern about an illness, and services account for a much bigger proportion of China's economy now. So it could potentially have a significant economic hit, even if it is contained.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Tom mentioned the timing of it coming around the Chinese New Year, and how there's such a movement of people within the country, and how that could actually, unfortunately, facilitate the spread of the disease. So that's something I'm sure the Chinese officials are watching closely. And again, as you mentioned, there's actually been some calls from government by saying, don't go home, don't travel, and I think that's all predicated upon trying to limit the outbreak here.
That said, we are seeing a relief rally today, so not necessarily that much concern being built into markets. Right now, let's head down to our 90 Now in studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, thanks. The rules are set. Opening arguments are due to begin in a little more than an hour in the Senate impeachment trial of President Trump. Before they do, though, senators from both parties are speaking out before they become silent jurors once again. Democrat Chris Coons.
If President Trump hopes to be exonerated here in the Senate, as he keeps saying, he should make a case. Like the presidents who've been impeached before him, President Clinton, even President Nixon, he should encourage his top advisors to cooperate and to testify if he hopes to clear his name.
Republican Rick Scott says he's open to hearing witnesses after the arguments.
But I don't believe it's my obligation to go prove their case. It's their obligation to prove their case. They said this was so important, they had to do this so quick, and they wouldn't even go through the process, wouldn't go through the court process. We have a process. The president does have rights.
And President Trump says he's open to hearing witnesses as well, though he says testimony from some officials could pose a national security risk, among them Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, though Pompeo says he'd be happy to testify if he's legally required to. The latest polling in the Democratic presidential race shows Joe Biden fighting Bernie Sanders for the lead. A Monmouth poll shows Biden 7 points ahead of the Vermont senator at 30%. A CNN survey has Sanders surging by 7 points to a statistical dead heat with the former vice president. Of course, 4 candidates are leaving the campaign trail to serve as Senate impeachment jurors, but Sanders is pulling out the stops to keep the crowds coming in early voting states. Sanders' campaign is holding caucus concerts with hipster bands Vampire Weekend and Bon Iver the weekend before the Iowa caucuses. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon N.A. Member FDIC.
In-depth analysis, concise.
Dad, I'm doing the mashed potatoes too.
Do the Albert Bartlett potato mash.
Do the twist.
Do the patatas bravas with a British twist.
Yeah. Do the brown sauce, balsamic and chutney.
Oh, do the melting potato slices.
Do the dishes.
Grab a brand new recyclable bag today and do the Albert Bartlett.
He's got a brand new bag.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The Sky Broadband sale ends soon. Get a massive 30% off superfast broadband and anytime calls. It's now just £25 a month for 18 months, so you can stream, share, play or tweet in the living room, bedroom, hey, any room you like. It's usually £37 a month, but now it's just £25 a month for 18 months plus £19.95 setup. So what are you waiting for? Offer ends 6th of Feb. Visit sky.com today. Sky Fibre network areas. Speeds vary by location. Prices may change during contract. Terms apply.
On this week's On the Media, we peel away the many layers of the Warren Sanders sexism sideshow.
The first layer is, can we acknowledge that in a country that has only elected male presidents throughout its history, that gender is a factor?
Also, depressed by politics? We have a plan for that. Listen to On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie.
With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker, the Bloomberg Newsroom. This Bloomberg Business Flash. This on a day when the major averages are all higher, but they pared back some of their earlier gains. Stocks coming off their highs as China raised the death toll to 17 from that deadly virus. As for individual shares, IBM rallying after revenue beat estimates. And we had news on Tesla, the market value soaring past $100 billion. So Tesla is now topping Volkswagen for the first time. In the S&P 500, 59 of the 500 companies there have reported their earnings so far this earnings season. We've had about 71% reporting positive earnings surprises. We have right now the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 27 points. That's a rise of about 0.1%. We're at 29,225. The S&P 500 8 points higher. That's up 0.3% at 3329. And the tech-heavy NASDAQ Composite Index 47 points higher. That's up about 0.5% right now at 9,418. As we look at treasuries, the yield on the benchmark 10-year note at 177. The price there pretty much dead flat. Brent crude, the international benchmark, down 2%. We're at 63.27 a barrel. And we check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
The impeachment trial continues in Washington, D.C. in the Senate, and there is a big question about 4 U.S. senators, Republicans, who hold the key to whether or not the trial will involve witnesses or not. Joining us now to talk about the political consequences of the impeachment proceedings is Wendy Schiller, professor of political science and public policy at Brown University, joining us from Providence, Rhode Island. Professor Schiller, thank you so much for being with us. I want to start with the significance of this decision on behalf of that handful of senators who really are the key to whether or not there will be witnesses in this trial.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really crucial to understand the politics of it. So Mitch McConnell wants to keep control of the United States Senate after the 2020 election. He's got vulnerable senators. He's got vulnerable senators in Maine, North Carolina, Arizona and Colorado, among others, and he's just doing the math. And Susan Collins in particular is viewed to be quite vulnerable on this issue. And the question is, if this is going to take it seriously, this is impeachment. Did the president abuse his power? We sort of know they're not going to vote to convict. We kind of get that idea. That's partisan loyalty. But should we all have a fair trial and a fair hearing of all the evidence? In fact, it could be that the evidence supports the idea that he shouldn't be convicted and ousted and removed from office, and that would help those 4 vulnerable senators. It's not clear to me that if you present the evidence or some witnesses, you're definitely strengthening the House Democrats' case on impeachment. So that's the puzzle, and the question is, are you going to appear to be fair and open in states where you're really going to be vying for those independents and suburban voters in 2020?
So, Professor, assuming that, I guess, witnesses are not called and there is no conviction, what would be a win for the Democrats here?
Well, I think you're already seeing part of the win, Paul, which is that the speeches, particularly last night, if you watch some of them, they got a little heated, they got a little fiery, and the House Democrats are trying to use this opportunity, I think, to rile or, secure the Democratic Party base. As we know, there's a lot of conflict in the Democratic presidential nomination process. There's no clear frontrunner. Nobody's madly in love with any of the choices, and that has to concern the Democrats in terms of turnout. But if you can drive this from the House effort, in other words, the House, as in 2018, did very well to take it back. The Democrats, if you could drive that and really rile up the base based on impeachment, particularly constituencies within the base on impeachment, that becomes a political victory down the road for the Democrats, even if they don't get the conviction that they're seeking.
Really? What about pushback? People say, look, the economy is doing really well. What's your plan for that at a time when President Trump's policies
Right, Lisa, this is exactly right. So it's a different audience, right? You've got the independents who are probably going to vote for Trump if the economy stays good, even though they may not like him. The question is, will there be Trump fatigue? Will Trump do something else that looks like this, that just takes people over the edge and they can't stand him anymore? That's a possibility, but that's a different base. The Democrats have to worry about turnout